Mm. Okay. What's the matter, Babushka? What's the matter, baby? Huh? What's the matter, mister? Easy? Huh? Not going anywhere. Oh.
He was to use words to indicate people are making things and this disinformation that now even up to democracy, right? Everything that he does is
the impetus of yet another crisis, which is the hypothetical climate crisis. And I'm an admirer of Bjorn Lomborg. I think he's done the best work on this matter, all things considered, methodologically. He's got the best methodology for determining how to analyze what steps should be taken to deal with environmental concerns. I'm not going to call them emergencies. He's documented it very carefully, and I defy anyone on the climate catastrophe side show evidence of a methodology more sophisticated than Bjorn Lomborg's in terms of analyzing an actual pathway forward that isn't merely apocalyptic neuroticism and the desire for totalitarian control. And so that's all lurking in the background. And so and that's also pulling the country apart in all sorts of ways, and it's underneath events like the fact that this attack occurred in northern BC the other day on the project on the coastal gas. Exactly. But it's part of the attempt to ensure that we all have cheap, reliable energy as we move forward into the future. And so, I'm going to make it one more case about this. I worked on the UN Secretary General's report on sustainable development for 2 years and analyzed all this sort of material data. That's where I came across Lomberg, trying to sort this stuff out. And one of the things I learned from doing that was really heartening to me, and also kind of catastrophically emotion provoking, was that if you look deeply into the data, and it's from as many different perspectives as you could manage, let's say with an open heart, the conclusion that you would derive is that the faster we can get cheap energy to the world's poor people, and the cheaper that energy is, and that's mostly going to be fossil fuels, especially natural gas, if we can do it right, the faster we're going to move towards clean energy in general, the richer people are going to get, and the more sustainable environmental movement we can have in the future. We make the poorest people rich by giving them access to cheap energy, mostly facilitated by fossil fuel. That's the best possible move forward for the planet and for those who are absolutely poor.
Affordable, reliable energy must remain paramount, especially for the world's poor. Short-sighted energy policies just hurt the disadvantaged.
And again, I defy anyone on the environmental catastrophe side to formulate an argument showing how that's not true. You say, I'm on the side of the oppressed, I'm on the side of the poor. It's like, you're not. If you're not for cheap energy, you're not on that side at all. So, all the bloody moralistic posturing is enough to drive you to distract.
Well, the analysis of the energy movement, it is so patrician and so patronizing, and so, by the way, you have 100% support from every possible major movement, but it is a craze. And then, by the way, we just put in over $500 billion of the deficit, over $1 trillion of the debt. Oil is now wrapping up to $80 or $100 a barrel, and the Canadian government has seized Alberta, built a concrete wall around it. Here's one for you. Maybe the emergencies that we're seeing this week, I don't know. Maybe this is one way of forestalling the knowledge that they have got. In the time of inflation, after 2 years, 2 years of economic disaster, one source of wealth that we had to close it down.
There's definitely a moral hazard there, Rex, is that, there's nothing more psychologically attractive than a false crisis to divert attention from a real crisis. And, I've been talking with people who are in the economic know in a very profound manner and who've demonstrated that in a variety of different ways. And one of the facts that was pointed out to me rather forcefully over the last month was that over the last 15 years, Canada's gross domestic product per capita has remained relatively constant at $43,000, while the Americans has moved from approximately that to $65,000. And so that's just one of many indicators that Canada is in a state of economic crisis, the magnitude of which has not yet been entirely revealed, and that the country is tearing itself apart at the seams. And so why not have a false crisis? Because then you can look heroic when you're dealing with something that doesn't exist, and you can beat down the Nazis and the Confederates instead of facing up to the fact that you've been so appallingly incompetent and moralistic over the last 6 years that things are really about to manifest themselves in their true nature.
Well, and you can bring this down. We started at a very early point. You can bring this to a good circle. After the 2 years, we haven't got the inventory of how many businesses have failed, how many families have been disjointed or depressed and made anxious, how much the economy itself overall has been hurt. We don't know yet if once the banks start to drop their interest rates, how this debt will grab us.
We have yet to fully tally the immense economic and social damage that's been inflicted over the past 2 years. The true costs may soon come due, contrary to the sunny rhetoric we've heard told.
I can't remember the time when there are sharper differences, more angry divisions. We've had contests between provinces, and we've had big fights over pipelines and transmission lines and all sorts of, but it was never carried out with animosity. It never quite went all up to brands. A man who comes in and basically says to the world, I am the personification of all that is new and correct in the 21st century virtue. Remember, it's 2015. I am sanctified by my own correctness on all other genuine issues, and I am going to build a tranquility founded in respect for all Canadians. And 6 years later, you got stallions on Parliament Hill running into walkers. You got the police probably being forced to do stuff that they don't want to. You have a parliament that's been eviscerated or castrated, the biggest debt ever. The West is angry, and we have on the public scene
The opposition is ineffectual and chaotic.
we have no.
Abandoned the working class, the
The
president.
entity has gone away.
Okay, so
No,
let's go back in time a bit. So, I remember I was politically active when the separatist movement was perhaps at its peak, and that would be under René Lévesque. And so the country was really tearing itself apart. And I was an Albertan, so there weren't two provinces that were more set against each other than Alberta and Quebec, and that might still be the case. But I know that among Albertans at that time, there was respect for René Lévesque. People actually trusted him, and they thought, well, those damn separatists, they want to separate. But we can understand why, and we don't think it's evil. We just think it's wrong. And people listened to Lévesque, and Lévesque and Trudeau could have a debate, and there wasn't this demonization, even when the country was literally on the verge of tearing itself apart.
You'd be better one in the sense that what Lévesque was. He was disliked for his cause, but he was very much admired for self-evident integrity. You can be on the wrong side of something and have a great deal of virtue besides that. And here's a better one. When Alberta was first facing the pillage of its natural resources under the National Energy Program, and that was PRC, it was then developed as Peter Longy, who in many ways was kind of an archetypal premier. He was the premier that basically filled the role that didn't fill him. Those two, and they had a certain equality in intellectual or moral presence. They sat at each other in constitutional conferences on television, and I know they sat face to face behind the scenes. Both of them were tough. They were both tough people, and yet there was no residue of master because he's a Nazi. No, there was enough character in each of them to have a deep and probably irreconcilable difference and still maintain civility and compromise. That's called Canada.
And that is what happened in Canada, is that civility and compromise did prevail up to now. Yeah, and that was also back when Tuck was actually still...
That's another story altogether.
Right? Yeah, well, it's definitely another story.
I'm laughing, but I'm not. This is a sad lesson. I'll tell you this for sure. That in the immediate future, in the next 12 months, we're going to hear so many ramifications of this. We've done a great injury that may not be easily repaired over time. And that's the biggest worry about it. This is the convoy, and this is the tearing of the protest. It's the nature of the country and the harmony that wants to do.
Unprecedented times in our country, and what a bloody catastrophe that is. And, I've not been an admirer of Trudeau since he decided, inappropriately in my mind, to run for office despite lacking all the necessary qualifications for doing so, except the unearned fame of his name. But having said all that, that doesn't mean I wish that he would preside over the destruction of the country as evidence of his incompetence.
Putting country over politics is crucial now. We need solutions, not ideological posturing. There are reasons critiques to be made, but statesmanship requires focusing on Canada's interests.
Six.
Where
I was at work, driving with the work that day, and we that side of town had no power. So we knew that there was high winds, nothing about a fire until yeah.
Oh, it's so sad.
I tried, but there was a lot of cars on the road, and I got maybe about 5-10 minutes off from the road, but
literally thought I was losing my mind. But now, my hearing actually muffled in the sense that you're really clean. You can't breathe, you have chest pains, you tremble and sweat.
You just feel really bad. You might feel like an impending sense of doom. I get really bad anxiety if I don't do certain things in a certain way.
You want to be productive and you want to get all of these things done, but then at the same time, you find yourself very distracted and this self wallow of like, I can't really do anything.
I didn't feel in control when it came to my thoughts. I was impulsive, lying a lot. I felt absolutely hopeless. I didn't think that there was a way to feel better. I didn't think that I wanted to feel better. Our traditional ways of hospitalizing people, it's not working.
Mental illness and poverty, those must kill you.
That's not right.
We're like for it now, a month.
Or asylum, people being restrained and locked up is not what we do now.
Mental illness is real. Our suicide rates are higher than they've ever been. People who have mental illness die sooner, so people are dying.
People think that you look at somebody and can see they've got a problem. People have mental illness and they
Okay.
look like normal people.
Couldn't afford the house, couldn't afford to take care of my grandmother. When people's minds break,
Pokemon.
they break.
Okay.
Cranberry to behavioral health, how can I help you?
Hi, Carmen, Dr. Laskia, you paid me.
There's a 23-year-old female in the emergency room who is suicidal. She overdosed on approximately 40 Cymbalta tablets. She does have a history of cutting. She recently started seeing Dr. Ingram outpatient. Firstly, her appetite. Her UDS was negative. Her alcohol level was 0.059 at 11:30 a.m. She has no significant medical issues. Could I get admission orders for her?
Yeah, I'll tell you the address.
Actually, my father, he wanted one of us to become that. My dream was always to be a writer and a film director, actually. But then I got into medical school, and then I found out that medicine is something that I like, and psychiatry is something that is my passion.
Yeah, and this is peppered with tofu. The masala is vegan. What do you want?
Taking care of the brain, the mind, the psychological stressors, and that's what psychiatry is for me.
Okay, let's eat.
I have two passions, my writing and psychiatry. Hopefully, through this video, this documentary, you can actually let people know to bring your family members right away. Don't waste time. If it's just like somebody in a heart attack and if they need a stent placement or a bypass surgery, you have to bring them right away. Somebody has a post-septic break or post-traumatic break. They need to come back.
first, you don't know where it's coming from. For me, a lot of times it happened driving on the road. So imagine you're cruising down the road, 70 miles an hour, enjoying a good song, and all of a sudden, you can't hear, your arms are numb, you can't breathe, you're convinced you're dying, having a stroke, or you lose your mind right there. And there's no safe place to go other than the shoulder of the road. And that's the type of fear that people live with who have it. They know that when it comes on, it's a trauma every time. You get re-traumatized with each panic attack. And I think that's how the disorder develops. Once you've had one, you have another that can snowball.
I was feeling so dark and nasty inside that I was, seeking out situations that would take that feeling outside so that I could rationalize it, so that I could say, well, this is why I don't feel good. So a lot of hopelessness, a lot of loss, a loss of rationality, a loss of sense of self.
It's mind-boggling. It's frustrating. It's amazing at times. It's almost like being in this like very toxic friendship. You're like, oh my God, yeah, let's go do all of these things. And you're like, oh my God, I have all of these other things at home that I should be doing. And you're just like, I'm having fun with my friend though. And my friend is ADHD.
What will happen to Fred now? What happens to all of them? The men and women from every walk of life who each year pass through doors like this into the mental hospitals of our land. 3,200 men and women all gathered together in a modern mental institution, a city in itself, complete with every facility for effective treatment. A favorable environment and human comforts are essential in any therapeutic system.
They're producing an electrical disturbance of the brain, dangerous disorganization of the usual patterns, and that
for some reason we don't understand, when the patient recovers from the treatment, they seem to be in a better state of mind.
In the good old days, we would hear, yeah, my grandmother was in trouble with this hospital and she died there. You hear that, everyone's panic with the grandmother died there.
As a society, we have little tolerance for bizarre behavior. So we build huge institutions and look away.
If you look at all the countries, any country you go in, the old state hospitals, they'll tell you, they look like lepers colonies.
No one seems to think that mental hospitals are the answer. At best, they're a holding operation until we think of something better.
Well, 60 years ago, there was very few medications. We really didn't have very much treatment as far as psychopharmacology was concerned. Even psychotherapy was not very well involved. In the past, they used to do lobotomy in some patients. Patients used to get restrained. Sometimes they would lock the patients in a room. For example, the bipolar patients who were married, they would just lock them. Previously, very severe bipolar or schizophrenic, there was no way because there was not very many medications, but they were a safe place to go, so they were not there. They didn't even have a lot of visiting hours. And even if there was very little visiting hours, the family wouldn't want to come. It's like outside, out of mind. They used to be called asylums, and that imagine that history is with people even now.
My aunt, I feel really bad for her because when her mental illness first started, she did go into the state hospital right away. And I'm not sure how long she was in there, but once she got out, my grandparents kept her at home. She didn't work anymore. She didn't go out on dates anymore. Her life became centered around this mental illness. Talking to my dad one day, he said, they never told us about that because they didn't want to burden us as kids. And I think it's something that you need to talk about. Mental illness is real. It's something that all of us can
We're
suffer from.
ashamed that we're fucking inadequate parents. What that is.
When I was a kid, we used to go to Traverse City snowmobile races, and I remember how spooky that hospital was. Nobody in the community even wanted to talk about it. Because, we'd ask a lot of questions as a kid. It was spooky. Huge fence around it. You never saw people. You didn't see anyone outside. It'd be in the summer, and there's no one. It looked like a prison.
It wasn't slave
This is not like Disney World that you are taking a tour. Okay? These are real patients who are there. So you need to just tell them that this is what happened. Those kind of tools, they need to be more sensitive to that. Somebody has a family member they're severe illness, or they themselves are severe illness. Then they feel terrible about those jokes. They don't like those jokes. I got reference from all the primary care physicians, and they will tell me, they will use the words like, this patient, is really a cuckoo. And I tell them, I said, so don't use that word. Although he said, no, the patient is not here. I said, no, but don't use that word. You can use words like, I think he's psychotic, or he's depressed, but don't use those words.
Have you ever worked in a mental hospital before? Oh, sure. I know all about those events. We prefer to think of this as a hospital where we treat sick people. Well, I didn't mean nothing. No, I realize you did.
A lot of people, they say, man, I had a panic attack today. I forgot my lunch money, or I locked my keys in my car. I think that is so overused. It's a little bit insulting because people understand a clinical panic attack. It has nothing to do with willpower. It has nothing to do with whether you're masculine or feminine. A panic attack has to do with brain cancer.
I encounter professionals who don't know that I have a diagnosis, and it's almost like being a fly on the wall because I've heard some really wild things said about BPD when the assumption was that there was no one with it in the room.
A lot of people say, I'm going to go kill myself, and I realize how offensive and how hurtful that could be. And a lot of people just say, I have anxiety when they're just feeling anxious in a moment.
When someone has gotten to know me, when a coworker has gotten to know me and said something about borderline personality disorder, all it has taken me to say,
wait, what? No, what?
I've even been
feeling anxious in a moment.
When someone has gotten to know me, when a coworker has gotten to know me and said something ill-informed about borderline personality disorder, all it has taken me is to say, I have borderline personality disorder. And I've even been told, well, you don't seem like you have BPD. Well, what does that look like?
Even that sensitivity, I have to be honest about it, it takes some time for, it took a lot of time for me to learn that sensitivity, or the words that I use, or the way I approach a patient, or in the family case. It takes some time, but it has to be there.
It's no easy on her because it's just something ridiculous. It's debilitating. It's not just debilitating.
When I first started having my problems, I would get manic, and then I would be depressed, and it cycled like every 3 or 4 days. It was like being on a roller coaster. When I was manic, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't eat, and then because you don't sleep, I crashed. I would be in bed for 3 or 4 days. And how do you take care of children when that's what's going on with you?
If things go awry in life, I can navigate through it and don't be so down, I don't have to have medication. People don't really know that living with pain is just, it's just unbearable. It's unbearable.
It was very, very difficult because I had no idea what was happening to me. The high, and that's when I did the things that were absolutely not me. Hypersexuality, drinking more alcohol. I had an affair,
I was
feeling that
making it up.
someone cared about me.
Or there's just no
since I
treatment
didn't
for
really
you
care
because
about
we don't have any
myself.
pills to give you.
And knowing
No,
that
it's like
that
pills
was
cannot be the
wrong,
only
I
option
didn't
here.
want to do it. I love my family, love my children to death, but it's like I had no control whatsoever. I've been in therapy and had this since 1976 probably, and it's taken me probably 30, 35 years to get past that guilt.
You'll never. Yeah.
I don't have the medicine that I need because
As soon as
the
you think you have
copayment
a
on one of the
headache,
medicines that
fucking
did work was $125, which actually is kind of stupid because you would forfeit $125, whereas the actual medicine with Medicare pays for is $700 for a refill. So I can't afford that. That's gonna cost me.
It's inhumane.
But I'm on disability because of anxiety, bipolar depression, you know. And then a lot of times I think if things were okay, I won't have the problem.
If they told
You
me
know,
that I
one of
don't
the first
level
things I hear from
diagnosis,
people is that they're stressed about money. Directly, because they don't have enough to cover their basic needs, or indirectly, like, well, I can't afford to keep a car, so I can't get to a job, so I can't this and do that. That's like the first or second thing on most people's mouths when they come in. Who in that situation is going to say, well, let's tack on a massive medical bill for me to walk into a hospital with this crisis, and then to see a doctor, and then to see a counselor, and then to pick up meds every month? It seems insurmountable.
In the 70s, it was like 1977. There wasn't help like there is now. I did end up in mental health in Saginaw for several days. Didn't help. They did a lot of shock therapy on patients, and they would come back and they would just set like zombies for a couple of days. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be me if I can't straighten my life out.
More than 100,000 people are shocked every year. This woman is about to get a series of treatments. She is in her early 30s, married, the mother of 2 children, and she's depressed.
I know in India, they used to do it as outpatient. So it was not even done in an operating room. Many countries it was done in an outpatient. So there'll be 30 people waiting outside, and the psychiatrist will be waiting there with an assistant with the electrodes. Like, okay, I'm going to burst 30 people today. And they used to use that word before very loosely. If a patient is waiting in the line, it looked like the slaughterhouse. Although we know that ECT works very, very well. The whole protocol of how to do the ECT has gone through a lot of revisions. In my opinion, it's like really giving a jump start to the brain. It actually increases the permeability of the membrane. So when you take a medication, it takes some time. ECT does. So we see robust response with ECT, but that visual has still stuck. We always are struggling with that.
I don't think they really knew how to deal with people back then, and so the big thing was, oh, you just need more sex. It's like, no, because that's the last thing that I wanted. I didn't feel worthy to be even touched, and it's like, no, that's, so I didn't stay with him for sure, and there just wasn't the psychiatrists around that were able to help people.
That was a psychiatrist.
That was a psychiatrist. I thought, well, that's definitely not where I'm going.
The last thing you want when you're depressed, you don't want to be touched. Or feel icky. Having someone else can violate you.
I think one of the saddest things I see is parents with kids not helping them become a part of the community so the community can open their world up.
Do you mom, your mother talking for you?
That's fine.
Yeah. Is it just easier sometimes?
Easier. A lot of words don't come out of my mouth.
So you were saying that there were some medical professionals who wanted to put Nathan away.
Yeah, because they
That was in 2005. I couldn't get really the whole record. I did talk to Dr. and he remembers that everybody with addiction.
Yes, and I remember Doctor telling me that he never felt that he'd be able to get him under control with medications, that he was going to need to be institutionalized.
Oh, fuck yeah.
They were going to place him in Carroll during that first admission because for some reason they thought he was homeless and had no support. And they were like, no, we're going to work on the medications.
This is the story of an incredibly persistent mother. Incredible, really. She did everything to fight it. I think only mothers can do this.
Oh.
But it worked.
The community mental health movement started in '63. President Kennedy signed the CMH Act, the Community Mental Health Act in '63, which initially gave federal funding to sites throughout the country. Not very ubiquitous, though. There were in Michigan about 11 sites. And then over time, to be frank, federal funding abated, mostly because of the Vietnam War. And so what happened, states started to step up. And then in the 70s and 80s, the state realized people didn't need to be medically incarcerated in state mental hospitals, so they could begin to live viably fully in the community. So the CMHs were the ideal support mechanism.
Figured it out.
All right, so we'll make sure every door has to be closed when they go in or out for the safety. So like anytime you guys walk out, just close it. When you're being admitted to a mental health unit, you want to feel like you're at a place where people are going to be kind, warm, that kind of thing. Especially if you've never been in a mental health unit. It is the most scariest thing you can go through because the stigma of mental health is what is our hardest barrier.
Because there's more resources to be. And sometimes you just need to make yourself willing to.
As far as the hospitals go, I think they're trying to make improvements so you're not seeing people just locked up forever. A local community hospital like McLaren Bay Region has a behavioral health unit where people come and they stay in the hospital. And the goal of that type of a hospital is let's get them in. They might be having suicidal thoughts. Maybe they're having homicidal thoughts. But they're not safe to be out in the community at that point. A danger to themselves or a danger to someone else. So we get them into the hospital. We get them stabilized on their medication. And then they get to go home again.
Our complaint is their diagnosis or your medication or whatever.
And how is she presenting right now in the emergency room?
She's surrounded by family, like I said, she's guarded, but she's very sad.
Okay, so she's very, very depressed.
Very depressed, and yeah, there's clearly some stressors, but she's not forthright with what they are right now.
Okay, but she is agreeing to sign voluntarily, so we do not have to petition her or anything.
Correct.
Okay, so admit under Dr. Nicholas, diagnosis major depression, voluntary patient. She has no home meds, so we will not give anything. But she has been drinking quite a bit of alcohol, it looks like. So let's start her on the alcohol detox protocol with Xerex. Okay. And we will give Haldol 5 milligram pure IM to 6 hours PRN. And Vistril 50 milligram PO to 6 hours PRN. And voluntary patient admitted under Dr. Nichols, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lavier.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Like that. Yeah, retreat against the law of court order.
My contact that someone concerned about them petitions the court saying, my son, my nephew, my father is behaving erratically, threatening that he's going to commit suicide. So someone in the family files a petition saying this person needs mental health help but won't seek it and doesn't appreciate that they need the help. The petition brings them to the hospital's attention and gets them examined. Then an attorney must call them. That's where I come in. Come in, explain what's happening to them, explain their rights, and at that point, the patient has the opportunity to put themselves back on the path of a voluntary patient. They can sign what's called a request to defer their hearing, that is, set it off indefinitely, and give them a chance to follow up on their mental health treatment voluntarily.
Alright, so this over here and here.
We have to be upfront with them right in the beginning, and it's really hard, to tell them that their mother petitioned them to come into the department. And then the doctor certified that they agreed with it. So that's often difficult. But I tell you one thing, they don't leave mad. Our patients don't leave upset. They don't leave mad. They leave grateful. And that's probably the easiest part, is to see when you see somebody come in so upset and angry that they were admitted to a mental health unit, and you get to see them walk out, thank you for the help that you gave me. It's a nice feeling.
This is what we do, you see. This is 2 or 3 minutes is what we spend. Because, we have 5 admissions in the night, which I can't spend like a lot of time, and I don't need to. The decision I have to make is whether I admit or not admit, whether it's a voluntary patient or a petition. The family is supportive, is agreeing to come in, we'll start the detox from alcohol, and then once we evaluate her, we start on the antidepressant and other things. And then discharge them.
Our major depression is the biggest diagnosis on the unit here. It's psychosis is another huge one. Psychosis is the most heavily diagnosed in the whole hospital because there's just so many things that can cause psychosis. It doesn't always have to be mental illness. It can be your blood sugar uncontrolled and you're not thinking correctly. So a lot of times when we go down on screen, those are the things that we have to evaluate. Is this a medical issue? Because you certainly don't want to put somebody in a mental health unit when they're really suffering from a medical emergency that's related to their physical health versus their mental. So that's why we do what's called a screen, and we evaluate the patient before they come
What do you have before the meal? Because it was an anxiety.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was ugly. How about that? So, and I wanted it to feel like you were just getting therapy. Like if you have to go to a retreat, what does that feel like? You want to see pretty pictures and where you feel like you're not somewhere where you can't leave.
But you are somewhere where you can't leave. And
Thank
this
you.
is not a voluntary retreat.
This is no
for
snake.
the middle class.
The doors are locked, but it's not a prison to be in. For these locks are meant to protect patients. No longer able to take care of themselves, they depend on others to help them live from day to day.
Over 500,000 Americans have been to state hospitals.
A state hospital, if you think about it, provides food, clothing, shelter, incredibly high staffing ratios. And there was a time where state hospitals made a lot of sense. The medications were
A lot of money.
and they were really expensive. Now, people with Medicaid coverage, and even not Medicaid, can get really good psychotropic medications to live in the community. The supports are really good. We can help people with housing, employment.
To
They can get what are called natural supports. They can live with their parents, their friends, their roommates, people buy their own homes, get jobs. None of which could have happened in the state mental hospital. So the only downside, of course, is that in a state mental hospital, you're protected from homelessness. You tend to have a job of some type. In the community, those are hard to come by. And if you live in poverty, there's a low-income housing shortage, and it's hard to get employment if you're disabled.
Are you insinuating that homeless people will admit themselves into
It
psychiatric
might have been a year
wards
ago.
just so that
I
they're
was sitting in church.
not
My
homeless?
landlord called me and said that they're thinking about buying the building. So for me to come and sign the lease, because Holly, if you don't sign the lease, they can get rid of you the next month. And this is true, and that did happen. So here you got people that bought the building, and then the next month these people have to get out. Each and every one of my neighbors, you seeing them leave. It was awful. It's an awful nightmare. My increase would have been close to $300 for 4 months, and then $500 after the 4 months. And don't think a day go by. I don't think October the 1st was the time when they said that I would be having to get out of my apartment. And then I know it's silly. Then yesterday I said how many more months I got till this lease is up. And then sometimes I think, what if it's the owners of the old place come and buy this place too? So I do still have a lot of anxiety about that.
Just be rude to them. Make some form of apology.
Listen to some of my Wonder Woman stuff.
Mentally ill.
I've got Wonder Woman Lava Lamp, Wonder Woman Gal Gadot like you would buy in the store, not Barbie Woman. When I grew up in the very fundamentalist charismatic movement. As a kid, I think I didn't have a full-blown panic attack, but I had something akin to it. We went to see a play called Judgment Morning Ministries.
She endeavored to train the child in the ways of the Lord. Well, let's see what happened to them on Judgment Day.
And these people they were a traveling troupe, and they would go from church to church. The play opens up, and you can see heaven on one side, people are dressed as angels, very smoky, and it looked beautiful. But the other half of the stage was dark, and they played this ominous sound, and the darkness actually opened up, and men came out dressed as demons. They had skull faces, and it was just black lights and the red that looked like real fire behind them. And even as a kid, I had that same numbness that I couldn't articulate at the time. I grabbed a hold of my mom and I whispered in her ear, I said, I can't stay in here. And I still can't feel bad for that little boy. I mean, I knew who I was.
I had a very bad experience. One of my patients stopped the medications because the family said that you don't get medications and body will save you. And he had a very serious suicidal attempt. He almost died. Thank God he survived, but that actually really opened the eyes of the whole family. I got another patient, a gay man, he killed himself because they tried to convert him.
Show you, I'm not ashamed. As a kid growing up, when we'd play war, they'd have guns. My first grade teacher helped me make construction paper bracelets that were yellow, and she cut out the red stars on them. So they'd shoot at me and I'd It was a pretty cool teacher, and then the Gal Gadot version of the headband. I wouldn't wear this in public. I did once on a dare, but there's certain things speak to us. I was always involved with music and drama and youth group. It was the spiritual connection that I think meant a lot to me. But I always knew there was something different about me that I could not talk about. Got engaged to the music director's daughter. And then probably 6 months before we got married, I said, Stephanie, I gotta be honest, I can't do this yet. They actually had a church service when they were trying to pray to gay away. They were trying to cast the demon of homosexuality out of our family. And it crushed my parents and it crushed me at the same time. And that kind of made me feel like I was flawed somehow, that I would come out of the closet and think, all right, I disappointed God. I made God mad. I don't deserve to be part of this community. What I didn't know was that genetically I was predisposed to panic disorder. And that was the right impetus to trigger it. I had this horrible internal struggle. It's like, if I were to die tonight on my way home, I'd go to hell.
If 1 in 5 of us have a mental illness and only 48% or 40% or so get help, that leaves a tremendous amount of people out there in pain. Our suicide rates are higher than they've ever been. People who have mental illness die sooner, 26, 28 years sooner than people that do not have mental illness. So people are dying.
Yeah.
There was actually a time where I actually had a plan. For me, it was a lot of different circumstances. I think it was just where I was in my life and the feeling of unhappiness and then having depression on top of that and then feeling alone and not being able to essentially talk about my feelings in a way that I feel confident today. Growing up in my community, a lot of people don't talk about their emotions. My life has always been living in trauma, and that was just because you never really know what to expect growing up Black in America. At any moment, you know what I mean, someone can decide that you're not worth it.
Just as much as someone white.
I actually remember coming downstairs one morning.
Not for those.
And Mom was gone. I thought, well, she must be sick. She hurt herself. And he took us there and he just said, oh, Mom's sick. And I'm like, okay. 6, 7 years old, you don't question anybody. You just take what they're saying for word. And I remember her coming home and giving me this puppet that she had made. And I thought, well, wow, I'm not sure what kind of sick she was, but she had a good time when she was there. And it wasn't until I was probably about 12, it took about 5 years before anybody even talked about it. Nobody said, your mom was in a mental hospital. She had problems. They just told you that she was sick. So as a 6-year-old, you think she hurt her stomach, she hurt her leg, broken arm. I didn't know. And it wasn't until I was about 12, and I think Mom actually brought it up to us and said, well, this is what really happened to me. And I look back now and I see the puppet, and I'm wondering, yeah, I can see why, it was a therapy thing for her. I, at 6, didn't understand why she had left. I knew that she was there for a couple months, so, they explained to us that Mom and Dad's getting divorced. We understood as much as a 6-year-old's going to, and that they're not going to live together. Mom's there for a couple months, and then all of a sudden, Dad's there, and Mom now moved out, and we didn't know why. And they didn't explain to a 6, 7-year-old why. But keeping it from us probably wasn't the best answer either, because we had questions.
No,
but we never felt like we could ask those questions. We just kept it inside, never talked about it. It was a hidden subject. I look back on those years between the mid-1970s and 80s and keep saying, who was that person? And who's often began seeing a therapist regularly during the 1990s. But it wasn't until the early 2000 that she said she got the help she needed.
When this article first came out, had your mother told you ahead of time that she was not working with the funds?
She did. She did. And I remember when the article came out, my dad, why does she got to put our last name on there? He was still very embarrassed to be associated with mental illness.
You know, being able to regulate and control
You want to go potty?
your
Wanna go potty?
emotions
I'll buy credit.
is incredible.
I think it's important that if anyone even suspects it, to go to a mental health professional and let them evaluate you. And because they'll ask the right questions. They'll put things into words that you couldn't put into words before.
Exactly.
I didn't know panic disorder and what it meant. But once I went and saw my first therapist, he said, "Do you ever feel this way?" And I was in shock. I thought, I'm not going crazy. There's an actual list of things that people like me have. And he said, "I've got some good news for you, Noah." He said, "It's treatable." And then he said, "But I have some really bad news. It's never going away." He said, "You will learn how to manage it, but it's never going to leave."
When this started, I would sit on my husband's lap crying, and the doctor said, family doctor that I'd seen for a long time, well, if you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, okay, this would be better. You could handle it. And then when I went to someone else, they would say when I was manic, it would be, you just need to go taken out behind the barn and give them a good whooping because that would take care of what you're doing right now. That isn't true. That isn't true at all. You need some kindness, some understanding. Good people can do bad things, and bad things aren't because you want to do them many times. It's because of the things that you go through in life. I'm proud of you. We do bad things in life. Things we can't take back, things we can't change, but we can still make it better. And this article helps some one other person, just one, makes a difference.
You want it to stop as fast as humanly possible. So you will make choices that you wouldn't have made otherwise. Usually you would take the longer way.
I think doctors weren't sure what to do with me.
Easier.
And this is like in the early 2000s, so like things have changed now, but I've had a lot of labels attached to me that I don't think really apply. A lot of them are still stuck to me. All these labels are given to me to like get me the services I needed, to get me on these medications, and to get me these like therapies and stuff that I was given. Maybe I needed to have those labels applied for insurance reasons. I don't know. I do think doctors were just like trying to figure out and like pin something down to like write off and say this is it and this is what we need to do. I got like a dozen different diagnoses instead and wasn't really treated for what I needed to be treated for, which was autism. It's really something you have for life and is fundamentally the way your brain works differently versus something you might develop and learn better coping mechanisms and be able to fit in better with society. A lot of times I'll say something that like seems obvious to me and I'll have someone around me say like, oh, I didn't like understand it that way. And a lot of times the same thing happens with like neurotypical people. Like they'll say something, I'll be like, oh, I didn't see it that way. And it turns out like everybody else sees it that way. This is like kind of silly to say, but like, I don't know, it's unique. It makes me unique. Lets me see things differently, I guess. I actually
no, they couldn't find a diagnosis for you, so they said that you were autistic.
All my records dating back over 10 years.
What do you know to find for those records?
All the stuff I don't remember.
I've tried Zoloft there was this other prescription that was for like low blood pressure, but there's been studies on it that helps with anxiety, and it just made me feel like a zombie. Zoloft also made me feel like a zombie. And honestly, it was just a very huge turn off.
With the hypomanic episode, it felt like finally, after all the struggle, I finally have arrived at this place where I feel like the perfect version of myself. Next thing you know, I feel so great. The rules, they don't apply to me. Adderall one way, alcohol the other way. There was one night where I had somehow locked myself out of my apartment, and so I kicked in the back door, and then that broke off these wood shards from the door frame. Next thing I know, I had taken one of those, shoved it up my chin. Next thing I know, I'm sort of getting drugged out of my apartment, full restraints. I'm being wheeled on in a stretcher, sedated me, woke up. Nobody came and checked on me. I'm in there for 6 hours, restrained, staring at found a dual diagnosis facility. Dual diagnosis meaning mental health plus substance. It was like 5 or 6 AA type meetings a day. And then I saw a psychologist once the entire 2 weeks that I was there. So I left. So it's just a fully developing, untreated manic episode.
I think you got bad drugs.
Something that stands out as dehumanizing to me
I think you got
was
bad drugs.
taking this medication that I knew wasn't right. It was making me feel terrible. It was making me feel sedated. And
Not just
verbalizing
sedated.
that, you have to do your best to be on your best behavior and be nice and calm. Or otherwise,
shit, yeah.
you know, you can't get your way, or you're manic, or you're out of line, or you need to go settle down.
Yeah.
So I was verbalizing that this
Causing
medication was working for me.
Getting yourself
I was
riled
feeling
up.
with myself, and that was written down in a book as a strike against me. It was a bad thing that I had done. So I realized at that moment that I really can't advocate for myself here. That's what it felt like.
Like you're
I felt like I couldn't advocate for myself, or because I was being unruly or non-compliant.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't feel that there was anyone there to advocate for me.
No, like non-compliant.
No,
It just means like
You know how it's active.
we don't
You
want
know
to
how many
work hard
patients?
at figuring out what's wrong
It's
with
like
you
some of them.
when we can just medicate you
Patients
into
like
a drug
the
induced
rest.
coma
Few others.
or you're
Okay.
catatonic.
I thought I was doing something real big for a while. Something where I was doing some good. And I messed it all up.
It's hard enough to walk in and say I need help. And then we have so many requirements regarding paperwork. So when someone walks in, we need to be welcoming. We need to say, we're here to help you. And I think that we try really hard to do that. But when you have to do a full assessment on the first day, you have so many days to get the person in. I think those are all really good rules, but it's also a burden in the fact that then you're not sitting there with the person in front of you and not worrying about paperwork. We've been doing this for a long time. We need to make improvement. We acknowledge that, but I don't think it's broken. I think we're serving a lot of people. I think that we're doing it better than we've ever done it. We know that about 43% of people who are dealing with mental illness don't come into treatment. This is a treatable illness that people can get help for and can live full lives.
Asking me questions, at least I know the answers to those.
You really need to see a psychiatrist and get some therapy, because even psychiatric care, having medication doesn't take care of it. You have to have therapy along with it.
Yes,
to be able to work out your issues.
100%. And they
I
didn't
know I
bother with
wouldn't be
any
here
of
if
that.
it wouldn't be for the psychiatric help that I found, the medications, and my
And it's
children.
not going to be the
grandchildren.
first psychiatrist. It's not going to be your first therapist. You're going to go through different bad experiences.
Not all women can realize that they have a
Good free
problem.
therapy is not good therapy.
Or
Never, ever.
Help out there is
Never.
okay to ask for help. We all need help occasionally in life, and it's not bad to ask for it. It shouldn't be embarrassing to say you have a problem and to ask for help.
Part of the barrier in my own recovery and getting started was my mom had to figure out where to get the insurance. We didn't always have it. And my mom was always someone who worked 2, 3, 4 jobs. And now I see working in a community mental health, we have people who have state insurance, which is great if you happen to be lucky enough to qualify and get a ride into DHS and have someone to help you fill out paperwork if you need
And
help.
someone who could check
and
you
get to the
for when your
hospital for
medication
the
stops
initial
working.
appointment.
Does your body
Now,
adapt
once
to
that's
it?
all set up, yes, sure, we can go grab somebody and we'll bring you in. We'll come to your house. I mean, I beat doors down all the time, but the disconnect there is that, especially in rural communities, there are a lack of free clinics. There's a lack of transportation to get folks in to just get the help they need.
Better help out 100%. Like this only fucking therapy I've ever got. That was really, really helpful.
I think the biggest challenge we have is funding and not knowing if we're going to continue to have funding. And because we are Medicaid and the majority of the people that we serve are pretty severely disabled, not just with mental health issues, but the majority of our funding goes for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who have significant physical as well as cognitive issues. And
We
so,
never had doctors that
you know,
did house
if
calls.
Medicaid gets cut or if our system gets privatized, my biggest concern is that we won't be able to serve the individuals that we're serving the way we're serving them. So that's the biggest thing, is managing the public funds and providing the care that we need to provide for the individuals that we serve.
At this point,
I don't even know where to start with
so many of
that.
them relying on this.
He was in the age group where he couldn't stay on our insurance after, what was it, 18? We paid cash. It all adds up. And you buy all these medications, you pay $1,000 for a script, and it doesn't work after taking 7 of them, and you throw that one out and start all over again. And his teeth, Medicaid Dilan ruined his teeth when he was a kid, and now he's having to have all of his teeth cleansed, and he clenches his teeth at night, so he's fractured all of his teeth, and they're all wore right off. So that's like $2,000 for 2 teeth.
Insurance, I didn't cover much of it.
Oh my God, no. By the time he was in, he had no insurance. We couldn't even afford to pay for his insurance. He doesn't have insurance for his job. And we tried to get on Medicaid, but since he lived with us, his household income was too high to get him on Medicaid, so he just had to pay for everything. Meds at one point were like $4,000 a month. And obviously milking cows, he couldn't get for them. Then you
It is really very unfair because insurance companies don't look at mental health the same as they look at
This doctor is
they
literally
don't.
at their fucking kitchen table.
It
He's
is,
like,
it
his
is still
fucking
an
mother did
issue.
everything.
So it is
Everything she
insurance should cover mental illness.
What do you like to do?
Milk cows.
What do you like to do for fun? You do anything fun?
Work in the workshop.
We just finished that one about a month ago. Antarsia. You just cut these pieces out and you put them back together like puzzles, you know. And it takes quite a lot of patience to cut them out good and a lot of sanding.
You're amazing. Crazy.
Here's one of his. This is a cutting board that he made. That's black oak, or black walnut oak, and white oak. So
No.
he still don't talk a lot. You know.
It's all our feelings. We just can't make it come out of the mouth that we want to. You know?
The community is probably the biggest reason we
I
functional
personally think it's brain
because
damage
the
from giving
community
someone too much
helps
medication.
He
while
does
their
his
brain
own
is
banking. They help him. The auto parts store guys know him. Everybody's there and supportive. Yeah, it takes a village to raise a kid, you know.
Or super fucking bad love. Yeah.
It's really unfair when you talk about someone who needs attention and needs care. You can't afford it.
Too hard.
I've had patients right now who have to
Not
make
working
decisions
out,
on
figure it
medication.
out.
And I'll tell you, listen, I can't afford $3 medication. I do $1 medication. And you say $3, but if someone's really struggling that much, he said, I need the $1 medication at this point. There's other things are going on with it. So I think that's part of the issue. It's not a priority for us in our country. We view it as, you know, this is America. Get yours like I got mine. Patients who don't go will go without treatment. They cost us. If you look at the number of patients we're seeing in the forensic center in jail setting, in many cases, these are folks who failed outpatient treatment. The ship is going from basically outpatient treatment to criminal justice treatment center, which is much more expensive. Our whole system needs to be corrected and needs help. This one message,
You know, one look at a state hospital and any layperson would say, okay, this is a prison. In fact, some asylums, like the Upper Peninsula Asylum, were literally converted into prisons. Since the end of the asylum model, we have seen the rise of mass incarceration. When there was deinstitutionalization, a lot of these patients did become homeless, and they were arrested by the police and put in jail. This is something that we see all the time.
When I was in prison, I received 2 quote unquote official mental health assessments. These were given simply because the majority of my time spent there was in trying to get transferred into mental health court. But in order to get into that court period, you have to prove to the first judge that your crimes were causally connected to your mental health disorder. What they did is they just scheduled me for one first assessment. They read off some generic questions, things like, at the time that you committed the crime, did you feel that you had a superpower? The answer is no, but there's a whole lot of other things I thought. I would definitely not say that prison is the best place for people experiencing mental health disorder to get the support that they need. It seems like they are already the easiest to neglect. And so with that mentality, I think you also get the sort of a dumping ground that goes back for centuries, just wanting to remove people from society.
When somebody goes to the prison for a crime that they've committed because of their psychiatric symptoms, it's very hard to release them and then transfer them to the state hospital. This is unbelievable. So many patients, they just are, their life is done once they go to the prison. There are studies showing that a lot of them have been assaulted, they have been raped. Then they become worse because of the whole trauma. But that's something that
I'd rather death.
that has to change. That has to change. I don't know what's going to happen next.
Mass surveillance and authoritarian rule, actually. This is what happened next.
Hello.
Hello.
So let's see. Well, things are going well, considering there's a lot to be nervous about, a lot to be anxious or depressed about. I just think we live in a time that lends itself to people becoming, afraid, people living in despair. We've had an uptick in suicide. The biggest threat to public health and safety in some ways is mental health. If people can't function within society, within their jobs, if they can't function in their roles as a parent, if they can't function in school, then it's as debilitating as having a deadly or infectious disease. All has been
February.
I left my position in social work. I started working another low stress job so that I could get back in school, and then the world went topsy turvy. In terms of my mental health, I saw a relapse or uptick in symptoms. I was able to speak with a psychiatrist to change my medications. I now talk to my therapist via text. I can't really imagine anyone in the world right now walking around just hunky-dory with the way that things are going. I think that we are all experiencing anxiety and depression.
A lot of my patients suffered a lot. Some of them lost, their near and dear ones. The worst thing is like our patients, particularly depressed and anxious patients, we tell them to socialize, to help them with their depression and anxiety. And this is the first time we told them to not socialize.
October is always a scary month for me. I actually hold my breath, metaphorically and literally, as the month changes. And I'm going to share something that I didn't share before. The reason I don't share this is a lot of people would say that's what made me gay. But October started being a bad month for me when I was raped. I was 18 years old, and I was raped by somebody who was my superior at a fast food restaurant. And they got me extremely drunk. And it was probably the worst of my life. There's a part of me that is still haunted by that. In October, we opened the windows to let the dot out. The cold air is purging, and the decay around us is imminent. It's beautiful or something. So it's not easy in October.
We're heading and sliding into winter, so that's very difficult for me because I'm finding that I'm already getting depressed. I had to increase my medication yesterday. I mean, I'm exhausted, but I wake up in the middle of the night for 2 or 3 hours and can't go back to sleep because I kind of have things running through my head. So that's what I'm hoping, that with the increase in the medication, that I will be able to sleep all night.
Given the current climate of the nation and with the pandemic, it's my understanding that more people are suffering more, and that's causing a need for more mental health care. You can't have a bunch of people sitting in the waiting room for a half hour.
As I kind of exited social work, I saw a great rise in the need for it. So since then, I've been kind of volunteering my time and my skills as much as I can while not being affiliated with an agency. A lot of the peers that I'm still connected to are providing services online or over the phone via Zoom calls like this one. We really adapted to the state of the world, and we adapted quickly.
The pandemic has been challenging, truly. I was homeless for 44 days before I secured this space and was able to move into it. My roof collapsed, and with that, there was a leak. So I was pretty much couch surfing.
Well, it worked out for you.
It was hard,
I was
truly,
couch
to
surfing, and
not
all my
only
shit got
have to
stolen.
advocate for myself while living in
Okay,
homeless
Jack?
while also trying to find a place to
What's the
live.
matter?
It was the longest 44 days of my life. And
Okay?
on top of that, we're in a pandemic, it was finals week, so it can be hard sometimes, truly, to find yourself in all of that, you balance, and yeah, especially when you don't have the space to do that.
It's not safe. I was gonna give you shit for doing your homework on the side of the road, so.
In the past year, well, Nate decided to quit taking his meds this summer, so we had an event. Basically wound up with medication changes. It's actually been a blessing because we changed medications from the Risperidol to Invega, and it's actually been a good thing. You know, at first it's like, oh my God, here we go. But we didn't wind up with an admission. The new medication worked immediately. And we only had like a bad week after that, and things are doing quite well. You like the new meds, don't you?
Yeah.
In fact, his speech is better, talks more. We're just at the beginning of starting the medication, so we'll see.
Yeah, boy. See this fucking guy. He's adjusted to his meds.
It was a good experience this time. His copay on it is negligible. I think, what was it? Like $14. There are improvements in the way mental health is treated. Things have gotten better.
How generally are you doing, Nathan?
Good.
I've never been to a protest. I've never led a protest. So going to that protest here in Marquette, the protest was for George Floyd. It was a Say His Name protest. And it was shortly after millions of people watched that video of him being, choked to death by a man kneeling on him.
Oh yeah, but he could have very well died from fentanyl overdose.
It was very hard to watch. I think I see trauma, and I think that it's years of trauma that like no one has ever been able to talk about. And I literally like afterwards like broke down and cried, like had to sit down and just it was like, whoa, all of this raw emotion is happening, and I don't understand it. And but all I know is that like I have to do something. Social Justice for Us mission is to uplift the marginalized voices.
Amplifying the voices of marginalized people in the Marquette community, people that aren't being heard. I joined Social Justice for Us about 2 months, I think, after they were formed officially. 2 days after their initial formation, I had gone to a protest and met up with them.
What makes SJFU so unique is that we're all on the spectrum some way, somehow, whether that's a spectrum on the LGBTQIA, or we even have members that are autistic. We have members that suffer from like deep anxiety issues, deep depression issues. So we're all living and battling life in a way that truly inspire us to make it better. Yes, Milo.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't buy into this.
With
I get
high blood pressure and heart and
protest. I get
lung issues running in my family, I wanted to make some life changes because I know as I age, my metabolism slows down, and I learned to cook.
7 days.
When I say cook, I'm talking about boiling eggs. But I learned that I felt
It's
better
not
if I
for
ate that way. My blood sugar was
Black
stable,
Lives
I was
Matter.
more hydrated, and
Really,
it's minimized
it's
what
for
probably would have been
blackout
more
and medium
catastrophic
blackout
for my
that they
mental
get.
health in
And most
terms of
people don't even know that
my
they were watching.
ability to cope with my anxiety, even with the meds. I'm never going to be a homeowner again. That's something I've no interest in. It's a change. That's a needed change.
The only changes I had was, getting mom's groceries, getting my in-laws groceries. That they're elderly, and we didn't want them at the stores to go any place to.
What do you mean I'm elderly?
But we didn't want them to get any sickness or illness that they could recover from.
Usually I'm a jewelry maker. I made these bracelets. I'm real good at it. I used to make purses and stuff. But I've always been an artist too, so this gives me so during COVID-19, in the middle of the night, sometimes my favorite time, I just sit up and I go to Pinterest and try to find something that I can draw. And now you're about to see what I can draw.
I want it to be more natural, but this is a bird's eye view of a bird's nest. That's a self-portrait.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I always wear a hat, but
That's great.
That's my self-portrait.
No, pay attention.
I'm just moving from a little apartment in Saginaw to a slightly bigger apartment in Saginaw. I took a place that was a little cheaper because my employment was impacted by COVID, and I am going back to school. Just found a place that was a little bigger. I've got a great big dog to look after, so they needed some space.
If I can parents pay for your fucking education.
Is there anything burning in your heart that you want to share with the world?
No.
No.
No. You want to tell the world anything? No.
Hopefully, this crisis will go away and people will go back to where they are, seeking help whenever they need it. But please get help when you have mental illness. Go to a psychiatrist, go to a therapist.
Better
Don't
help.
think that you are your diagnosis. Please don't. You're different. You have a lot of strengths. We got a lot of patients who do very well.
What the hell?
If you are really at your low point, if
Okay.
you're suicidal or very psychotic or manic, and if you have to go to the mental health unit for a few days, don't feel bad about it.
I don't feel bad about it. I feel scared about it. Like, they might decide that I'm not allowed to leave. Because I'm being non-compliant. Solely because I don't run into a coma. And then being told, hey, well, I'm better now. Bye.
Psychiatry has made enormous progress from the days of the asylums. Therapy and medication saved my life. And they've saved the lives of millions of people who've been able to live happy, productive lives in their communities. But millions more are being forgotten. Asylums were never abolished, only rebranded as mass incarceration, as a homelessness epidemic, as skyrocketing medical bills. The first asylums were not only built to treat people with debilitating psychiatric illnesses, they were also prisons for gay people, autistic people, rebellious women, anyone our society wanted to forget. We cannot fix our mental health care system until we change our mentality about people with psychiatric illnesses. We are not problems. We are people. And we are not going to be forgotten anymore.
You okay? For some reason, this documentary was like half okay, but the other half was pretty fucking terrible. It's a matter, Bobby. Giacomo. You're making me nervous, baby. Oh, jeez. Done.
We need an ambulance, please.
Fresno and broadcast for welfare check. Possibly 2 subjects overdose.
No. None of this.
911 state emergency. I don't know what happened. My son's dead. I need somebody here now.
No, please stop. Please. I can absolutely not take that. It's too late for my people. My people are already dead. Oh, for fuck's sake. Please. That's super unhelpful. Thank you for sharing. Huh. No. Why? You're stupid.
Another case of do as I say, not as I do. Deputy Prime Minister says she doesn't even use a car, caught speeding 40 kilometers over the speed limit, considered dangerous driving.
I am so excited.
A story from the Counter Signal exclusive.
Plugged in.
Charged near criminal speeding. I don't know why they're saying near criminal speeding. This is actually criminal speeding. We're going to get into that. But here she is, renowned city cyclist Chrystia Freeland, and Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, has been formally charged for extreme speeding after she was caught driving 142 kilometers in a 100 zone on the highway. Now, we're not sure if she might get off on these charges. We don't know. But it's kind of hypocritical, considering she was talking about how she doesn't even use a car. She just walks or rides her bike, which was also, by the Blacklock reporter, found to be not true, as she has a chauffeur when she's spending her time in Toronto. But when she's not in Toronto, she's definitely stunt driving. And, well, I'll get into that. It's unclear if Freeland was granted roadside leniency, as her charges indicate. She was driving at speeds just shy of criminal. Just shy. The Counter Signal has reached out to Freeland's office. I'm sure they got back to you right away there, Kian. The vehicular crashes both head on with other drivers and impact with roadside obstacles at these speeds often lead to multiple fatalities. According to sources, Freeland was charged on the 15th while she was driving alone in the river area without an RCMP security detail. Now, this is my favorite part of this whole article. According to the Department of Natural Resources, most cars, vans, pickups, and SUVs are most fuel efficient when they're traveling between 50 and 80 kilometers per hour above this speed zone. Vehicles are use increasingly more fuel as the faster they go. And I can vouch for this, but I mean, each car is different, obviously. I'm a mechanic. I know a thing or two about this, but it's actually accurate. And Chrystia Freeland, who's, imposing all these fuel restrictions on Canadians, is, well, stepping outside of her boundary once again. Of course, all of these elites, they love to fly around on the globe, but then they like to guilt trip us about our fuel usage. Just, getting to work, that kind of thing, trying to feed your family. But this is the kind of thing that they're putting limitations on us for. Now, what is stunt driving? According to Ontario, these are Ontario rules. I'm not sure what the rules are exactly there, but he said near stunt or near criminal in that case being 42 kilometers over. I know in Ontario here, stunt driving, they call it stunt driving when you're going 40 kilometers over the speed limit when it's less than 80 kilometers in that area. So I don't know what it is for 100. If you know the answer to that, leave a comment in the comment section down below. At what point does it become stunt driving? Apparently, if you're doing stunt driving and you're caught for this, you're going to get a minimum of $2,000 fine. And it could reach as high as 10 grand and 6 demerit points. But what do you need demerit points for when, if all else fails, you can just lean on your taxpayer paid chauffeur? This is the case. This is where we're at. Pierre Poilievre put a tweet out, Freeland's message to Prince Edward Islanders, worried about 61 cents a liter carbon tax. Move to Toronto and get a bike. This is what she had to say ahead of all of this, before we even knew that she zips around in her sports car. But this is what she had to say to them when they had these questions to ask.
Question for the Deputy Minister. What do you say to Prince Edward Islanders who woke up to a significant increase in gas, diesel, and oil this morning between 6 and 8 cents per liter?
Okay. Well, I have been talking about that with Keith and Sean. Keith and Sean and I had breakfast together before that.
One of the key industries here on Prince Edward Island, in particular, for services, and particular to that, are car services. People traveling from our region to this island to be tourists. Policies like the carbon tax and the clean fuel standards, which are by design meant to reduce consumption of fuel and reduce. Are you worried that's going to have a chilling effect on one of the key industries here on Prince Edward Island?
So yeah, I'm very aware of that, and actually,
with a couple of my colleagues from Halifax.
Fast, I'm sure.
We very much believe in PEI. We believe in the tourism industry, and we believe in the PEI economy overall. Today's announcement was about all of that. You guys are nice.
I did want to.
She's not even dodging questions. She's just answering it with nonsense. She's jittery all over the place. Is she on Quaaludes or something? What is the deal with this deputy prime minister? And did she have a drug test when she was pulled over for speeding 40 kilometers over the speed limit, which is dangerous as other people are trying to commute, get to work, or even driving with their families? This is something that most people would speak out largely against in this case. But is Deputy Prime Minister doing her job in any which way? Is this whole cabinet doing their job at all in any way? I always love to use these sensational headlines to talk about real issues, and this is the real issue. Housing in Canada. The Minister of Housing is suggesting that feds may cap international students to address the housing crisis. Well, is that really going to do anything? Now we have Liberal Housing Minister Sean Fraser that said that Ottawa isn't ruling out capping foreign student visas as the country struggles to contain affordability and in a housing crisis where also letting in record number of international students. Yeah, we're letting in a record number of international students, but that doesn't make up the bulk of all people that are coming in. We're talking about 500,000 people per year for the next foreseeable future. I guarantee you they're not all international students. So putting a cap on that is really not going to fix anything. And if anything, we like people that are coming to consume our products, like our universities, things like that, instead of people that maybe don't have any skills or anything like that. We do need people with skills, so we should definitely be screening the regular immigration for that kind of thing. We need people who can obviously build houses, and we need to cut all the red tape involved in between. Now, Bloomberg Economics is talking about Canada is likely sitting on the largest housing bubble of all time. Yes, it was only a few months ago. It was weird if you called it a housing bubble. It's not a housing bubble. No way. It's just a strong economy. No, it's been a housing bubble for some time, and these housing prices have been speculated up ridiculously. And we need to get in there and actually supply more houses or have fewer people in that marketplace for at least the interim until we can get this under control. But no. This is not the plan here. The level of debt that Canadians have taken on in comparison to their incomes has put them in a precarious situation. Should mortgage rates continue to rise, which is likely, Philip Colmar said. He's a global strategist for Bloomberg, and for MRB Partners, and he told Bloomberg in an interview on Tuesday. Canada is probably sitting on the largest housing bubble of all time, he warned. Colmar argued that the inflated home prices in Canada are a result of 2 decades worth of easy money supplied by the Bank of Canada monetary policy for numerous reasons. Presented at the present moment, he sees risk in mortgage rates climbing as Canadian bond yields are dragged up, particularly at a time when debt to income ratios are sky high. We are seeing situations where people's mortgage payments are doubling overnight. They have doubled already, and those are the variable rate mortgages. Now in the next 18 months, we're going to have a huge number of fixed rate mortgages resetting and having to refinance and under the new inflation rates and the new interest rates. And let me tell you, they are not coming down, and they're not expected to come down. And this is a big problem for people who have so much household debt. People are going to become underwater because of this whole scenario.
Wouldn't we all like to buy things we don't have money for?
As it becomes an inflation risk. It has been an inflation risk.
Unfortunately, not all of us can go to the bank and be like, "Can I have some money, please?"
When it's setting interest rates. In a note to investors, BMO Capital Markets explained that falling new home prices reduced the consumer price index readings. However, they're starting to bottom and are likely to become an influence on higher inflation. The Bank of Canada is expected to keep a close eye on home prices as they turn into an inflationary risk. Now, what are they saying here in that? Well, it was really nice for the CPI, you know, the thing that they measure the inflation with, the thing that they keep flubbing numbers on constantly. We have one of the lowest in interest rates in the world at the moment. Well, no, not really. It's just they keep putting things in the basket of goods that are more deflationary, like cell phones and whatnot. And we have been seeing massive increases in cost of living, which is the real CPI. This is the average everyday person CPI, is the grocery bill. It's their heating bill. It's their gasoline bill. It's all of this. And this is the real cost of living crisis that a lot of people are dealing with. And as they say that the prices have reached their bottom and they're going to go back up, well, that's just going to cause the inflation to become more and more of an issue. And as that becomes more of an issue, the Bank of Canada's only real recourse out of this is to tighten its belt and raise interest rates. So we're looking at more interest rates to be rising in the near future. But this is why things have been turning around because, well, you know, you've seen the Liberal government, a Liberal NDP, you can't let the NDP off the hook here with their coalition, have been supporting these budgets and just blowing all of their taxpayers' money and putting us largely into debt and trying to keep interest at a really low price for a long time. That's what the strategy was. Spend all our money while the interest rates are low. Well, now things are going up and people are concerned. And when people are concerned, they shift their focus politically. They tend to go over to the conservative side, and that's what we're seeing here. See the federal government, federal 338 Canada model outcomes odds, and they're saying that in the next election, if there was an election coming up soon, if we had one soon, these are the odds of who will win in that election. They're saying the Conservative Party getting a minority is about a 48% chance. The Conservative Party getting a majority is about a 43% chance. The Liberal Party getting even a minority is an 8% chance. They are fat out of luck. People are starting to just chime in to what's actually happening here. And like I said, maybe the Conservatives may fix things a bit, but this always seems to be the answer for the average voter is to, when in economic trouble, vote for the Conservatives because they're the only ones that will hold that wallet back and not spend. Because let me tell you, even in a recession, Liberals and the NDP, they will not be spendthrifts. And that's really where we're at. But yeah, I always love to take these viral stories, the stories that are edge-hitting, breaking news, and bring in a little bit more of the other stuff that's happening here in Canada. So let me know in the comments down below. What do you think of Chrystia Freeland and her Fast and the Furious driving as she's telling people not to spend so much on fuel? She needs to get places though, right? Because that's her purview. But what about the rest of the responsibilities that she has and the rest of the federal government, especially when they've taken on the role of putting finances, our finances, in the same basket as their finances by, you know, causing so much inflation? This is really everybody's game at this point. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of all of this, and we'll see you again in the next one. Keep on trucking.
No. Holy fuck no. Are you serious? This is what?
DemocracyNow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Greece, the remains of at least 18 people believed to be asylum seekers were found in the Dacia forest, where wildfires have been blazing for nearly a week. The dense forest is near the Turkish border in northeastern Greece.
No fucking way.
Countries in the region with the hopes of reaching Europe.
Are you serious?
And dry and windy conditions have set off dozens of wildfires across Greece. Hundreds of firefighters have been deployed to fight the blazes while hospitals and clinics are almost at capacity. This isn't Paris.
Holy fuck. $2,000. What?
Stretchers everywhere, patients here, IV drips there. We had to arrange things. We had to get them on the beds, their serums, everything. It was like a war, like a bomb.
No fucking way.
Across Europe are in the midst of yet another heat wave as temperatures hit or top 104 degrees Fahrenheit in Italy and France. Here in the United States, heat indexes have been approaching 130 degrees Fahrenheit in some areas as triple-digit temperatures scorch much of the Midwest, the Central Plains, and southern states. Nearly 150 million people were under heat alerts Tuesday.
It's gotta be the tiny one, right?
In Zimbabwe are casting ballots
What the
in
fuck?
nationwide elections today as President Emerson Mnangagwa and his ruling ZANU-PF party face another challenge from Nelson Chamisa. In 2018, Chamisa contested his loss to Mnangagwa, and 6 people were killed in post-election protests. Mnangagwa was previously a liberation fighter who came to power in 2017 after leading a coup that ousted Robert Mugabe. Chamisa has vowed to implement economic reforms and bring Zimbabwe out of isolation stemming from
Yo.
and U.S. sanctions over human rights concerns. Chamisa addressed supporters at a rally Sunday.
Mr. Mnangagwa is not preparing to win. He is plotting to it. I told Sanda that he stole the election in 2018, but this time I will not accept to allow him to steal the election again.
The African Union has suspended Niger over the July 26 military coup. The AU also said it would, quote, evaluate the repercussions of possible military intervention by the West African bloc ECOWAS, but rejected any military action from outside the African continent. Earlier this week, ECOWAS rejected a 3-year transition back to civilian rule proposed by the head of Niger's military junta, General Abdurrahman Chiani. The junta has received significant support from Nigerians following the coup. In Sudan, fighting between military and paramilitary forces over control of a key army base in the capital Khartoum continued for a third day Tuesday. Thousands have been killed and millions displaced since violence broke out more than 4 months ago. This comes as Save the Children says some 500 children, including 2 dozen babies who are under the care of a government-run orphanage in Khartoum, have died of hunger. The group also reported about 30,000 children no longer have access to medical treatment for malnutrition and other illnesses after the aid group was forced to shut down dozens of its nutrition centers due to the conflict in Sudan. Japan announced it'll start releasing radioactive wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean starting Thursday. The move has been condemned by a number of Pacific nations, including China.
So confused as to why.
This is extremely selfish and irresponsible. China strongly urges the Japanese side to rectify its wrongful decision and withdraw its plan to discharge nuclear contaminated water into the sea.
Are you
Hong Kong
fucking
and
kidding me?
Macau said they'll impose a ban on seafood imports from 10 Japanese prefectures. Opponents in South Korea and Japan have ramped up protests since the plan was approved last month by the International Nuclear Agency. This is a protester in Tokyo.
The nuclear disaster happened in Japan, and Japan should send a solid message to the world. But the government told the world that it's safe without showing a
This is a $40 stuffed animal.
It's really outrageous. In the future, the children will bear the burden and have health issues.
There's no way.
Lawmakers officially elected Han Mane, the son of a long-standing
This is a $50 stuffed animal.
The country's new leader. Han Sen won re-election last month after eliminating
At
any rival
least.
challengers and declared just days later his son would succeed him. Han Mane is a military general. Analysts say Han Sen is expected to keep wielding the bulk of Cambodian political power even as he transfers the premiership to his son. China, Russia, and South Africa have called for expanding the ranks of BRICS membership as the group summits underway in Johannesburg, South Africa. BRICS currently is
What the
Brazil,
fuck?
Russia, India, China, and South Africa, but a number of countries from the global south have expressed interest in
I
joining,
am so
including Saudi Arabia,
confused as to
Indonesia, Iran, Argentina,
why.
and Egypt. The Brazilian president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, addressed the summit Tuesday.
That's so crazy.
The feminine idea of adopting a common trade currency for trade that won't replace our national currency. We've already overtaken the G7 and are responsible for 32% of the world's GDP in purchasing power parity terms. Projections indicate that emerging, developing markets are the ones that will show the highest rate of growth in the coming years.
Russia said 3 people were killed in drone strikes earlier today in Belgorod near the Ukrainian border. Separately, drone
that's so
attacks
fucking
continued in
cray-cray.
Moscow, with one hitting a
I'm like
high-rise building.
freaking
Who
out.
virtually addressed the BRICS summit today
That's
and blamed his
insane.
invasion of Ukraine on Western powers attempting to preserve their hegemony. Meanwhile, the U.S. is urging American citizens in Belarus to leave immediately as tensions
I
mount
need
from
to
the war
figure
in
out a way to
Ukraine.
get all my
US
fucking
Embassy
TY
in
toys
Minsk
back
said citizens should avoid traveling to Belarus,
before they
citing the
throw them in the garbage.
facilitation of Russia's unprovoked attack on Ukraine.
They have not already.
The Russian military forces in Belarus and the arbitrary
Bruh.
enforcement of local laws. Unquote. At least 16 people were killed and 36 wounded when a bus crashed into a freight truck in central Mexico Tuesday. Some of the injured are
Why do we
asylum
care?
seekers from Venezuela who were headed to the U.S. border for an appointment with Customs and Border Protection. The most recent reports say the majority of victims are Mexican nationals. Transportation accidents are a leading cause of death for asylum seekers traveling from Mexico's southern border to the U.S. In New Jersey, residents in Plainfield are calling for the resignation of a city planning board member after she threatened immigrant protesters with calling ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to have them deported. A live video recording posted on Facebook showed board member Carmencita Pyle asking questions about the immigration status of peaceful demonstrators who gathered at a street fair over the weekend.
I'm like
demanding
freaking out.
Plainfield
That's
and
crazy.
state provide affordable housing.
$1,000.
She started saying, quote, all you need is an ICE truck. They'll all be running. The protesters, many of them families, were evicted from their homes earlier this month after their building was condemned due to hundreds of violations. The group The Road New Jersey said on social media, quote, immigrants in New Jersey deserve respect, dignity, and safe homes, not deportation.
Yeah,
Attorney
well,
John Eastman, a key figure in Donald Trump's bid to overturn the
the rest of
2020
us are saying
election,
something similar,
surrendered
so
at Fulton
go for
County
that.
Jail in Atlanta Tuesday. He's one of Trump's 18 co-defendants charged in Georgia's
Where?
racketeering case. He spoke to reporters outside the
Where,
jail
why,
and
where?
claimed he and Trump will be fully vindicated.
None whatsoever. The president called and asked for representation. I think every citizen in my position should be willing to stand up for representation.
Are you claiming immunity from Trump has said he will surrender on Thursday. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows has asked a federal court to block his arrest in Georgia and transfer his case to federal court, claiming the charges stem from his position in the U.S. government. Meanwhile, the first Republican presidential debate is taking place this evening in Milwaukee. 8 candidates will take the stage. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, former Vice President Mike Pence, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. Frontrunner Trump opted to skip the debate, citing his lead in the polls. He's also refused to sign an RNC pledge to support the eventual Republican nominee. A federal appeals court ruled in favor of an Alabama law banning gender-affirming care for trans youth, including providing hormone treatments and puberty blockers. The Trump-appointed 3-judge panel overturned an injunction by a lower court against the ban. All major medical groups have backed gender-affirming care, which is considered life-saving for many. In related news, a federal judge partially blocked a law banning transgender health care for minors in Georgia. The ruling says the ban on medical professionals providing patients with hormone therapy is likely unconstitutional. Also in Georgia, the Cobb County School Board in Atlanta voted last week to fire a longtime teacher who read the book My Shadow is Purple, which is about gender fluidity and inclusiveness to her 5th grade students. The ACLU says 230 anti-LGBTQIA education laws have been advanced across the United States this year. And in Atlanta, the family of a man who died earlier this month after police tased him is demanding accountability and for the video of his encounter with police to be released. Johnny Holman, a 62-year-old Black grandfather and church deacon, was hit by another driver as he was headed home. When the police showed up, they ended up handcuffing and tasing Holman who later died at the hospital. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens has ordered a full investigation into his death. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report.
I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, watching it right now, will be thinking, hey, good for you, mate. You went off to be a monk. You went to India. And we'll explore your story there for sure. But I'm busy. I've got my kids to take care of. I'm holding down 2 jobs. I don't have time to think like a monk. And so if somebody is skeptical and is thinking that at the moment, what would you say to them?
First of all, I'd say if that's how you feel, then you are completely entitled to your opinion, and I respect it. I genuinely have no desire to want to convince anyone to try a new thing out or a new method that they have very little time for or don't feel the space for. But even if there's a glimpse of an opening in your mind, even if there's a tiny little bit of curiosity where you're like, I know I don't have time, but I think there could be something in this. Well, then this is what I'd say to you. I'd say that we will continue to create the life that we currently have with the current set of thoughts, wisdom, beliefs, and ideas that we have. And if we're happy on that path, if you could fast forward your life in 10, 20, 30 years' time, and you'd be satisfied with getting the life that you have right now, then that's great. But if, like the majority of people that I know and that I speak to and that I connect with online, the majority of us would look and go, no, I really want to change life. I want to be with my kids, but I want to change how I am with them. I want to be at work, but I want to be more present at work. I want to improve the quality of my life. Then I'd say that it's so important that we learn and open up our minds to alternative thoughts. I'll give you an example. There's this great study that MIT did on people's minds' openness and their ability to be creative and innovative. And they looked at 2 types of people. One person was surrounded by people who all knew the same people, right? Kind of like our normal lives. And the other person was surrounded by lots of people who didn't know each other. And they did the study around who is more creative, more innovative, and has a bigger impact in the workplace, in their professional life, and then a little bit into their personal life as well. And what they found was that those people who knew each other, who knew them back, lived in what was known as echo chambers. They were rarely exposed to ideas that improved their way of living or their professional performance. But people who were exposed to ideas that had no connection with other people in their life were able to be more creative, have better ideas, have more purpose, have more meaning in life. So often we've become closed in our little spaces around what we hear, what we know about, and we're not exposed to this new sense of ideas. And that's what I would encourage, is just approach it with a tiny bit of curiosity. That's all you need.
Yeah, so beautifully put. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that, support that. I think the tools in your book, frankly, will help anyone. There's tools in there that are going to help me. There's tools in there that will help someone in a different role, a different state of life, because I think there's a lot of universal themes there. I really want to explore and talk about some practical things throughout this conversation, Jay. But, I'm interested that many people have a crisis in their life from time to time. It might be a midlife crisis, a quarter-life crisis, and, they may go away for a weekend. They may go and buy a new car.
Please.
But you had a former crisis, and you went off to be a monk in India, right?
Please, just shut the fuck up.
Forgiveness with a narcissist is very tricky business. It's not like this to sit here and tell you whether you should or shouldn't.
Okay, now I'm starting to freak out.
But with a narcissistic person, I say,
Hey, Chad?
forgive with a realistic.
You don't have a choice.
You need to understand that when you
starting to freak out slightly. All right, we're okay.
Very, very well. Turn around and do the same thing again. Let's talk a little bit about what I mean by authentic forgiveness. When we think about forgiveness, it's a fraught space.
Okay.
Most of what we read about forgiveness is that forgiveness is always good. It's great. It heals people. It heals countries. It heals cities. It heals everyone. What if you forgive someone who repeatedly does bad, betraying things to you, and they keep doing bad and betraying things to you? How many times are we expected to forgive? Do we keep taking the punches and falling back on the idea that this is virtuous? How are we supposed to forgive if there are no consequences for the person? These are tough questions. And these issues don't come up as much when forgiveness is related to a situation that doesn't involve toxic personality styles. But sometimes people say they forgive. They don't really. It almost becomes a sort of performative forgiveness. But when forgiveness is not authentic, you can actually do that. And there may be people around you saying, look at me, I'm a forgiver, why can't you forgive them? But did they actually really forgive someone? Authentic forgiveness doesn't mean you just forgive. It means you engage in a process that is not mandated or scheduled. It means that you put your healing first and work on feeling whole and safe again. It means you hold space for you and your identity. It may not even look like forgiveness to other people. For example, as part of your process, you may decide to no longer speak to someone because it feels healthier for you. And as a result of that, you start feeling more whole again, healthier again, and find that you're able to let go of some of the resentment. However, others looking at you from the outside in may say, why are you giving them such a hard time? Why are you being so hard-headed? As though you are the problem for disengaging. But this process of setting a boundary and giving yourself space at a certain time, not punitively, but to just heal, could be a part of authentic forgiveness that doesn't look like forgiveness. For some reason, we have allowed the concept of forgiveness in our culture to become conflated with being a punching bag and a doormat. We position forgiveness as a gift for the other, with little regard for what forgiving does to the forgiver. And I got a video coming up on that too. Again, forgiveness is what I've been thinking about a lot. Now, authentic forgiveness is about the process and not the destination. It's about working on you, setting boundaries, deciding if you will forgive or not, understanding that you don't ever have to, whether or not you'll even tell the person you forgive them. It's not performative, so that you can prance it out and tell everyone you forgave and you didn't. It's just honest reckoning on whether you truly believe you can let go of the resentment. I think that a lot of people do over time, especially if they can get distance from a narcissistic person. But sometimes it takes a really long time. I don't view forgiving people as virtuous. And I view false forgivers who have no problem shaming others as actually being quite dangerous. Keep it real. Forgiveness in and of itself is not the goal. But you finding yourself again, giving permission to yourself again, in the midst of repeated betrayals, meannesses, and invalidations and cruelty. What you do with that, it's up to you. The authenticity of the process is more about how you work this out for yourself and not doing something that just lets everyone else feel better about the situation. That's what makes it authentic forgiveness. In authentic forgiveness, you may never actually forgive, but you're simply going to allow yourself
to let the process unwind and see how you feel.
Yeah, true.
So today I'm going to take on this video, this idea of avoiding.
What's up, mister?
So, you know, this
Okay.
is an interesting kind of a tricky topic, this idea of sort of pseudo-forgiveness. And ideally avoiding it.
I'm okay, mister.
Forgiveness is already a complex topic in and of itself.
I love you.
But understanding forgiveness within the context of narcissistic relationships is not. The challenge is that we want forgiveness to be simple. I forgive you, and good things will be good, and now things will be better, and I feel better about myself because I
Get down.
forgive them. So what happens when you forgive a person and they hurt you again, and again, and again, and you keep forgiving? Maybe because it feels like it's the right thing to do. Maybe it feels virtuous. Maybe it's just practice.
Okay, cool.
Maybe it's part of the religious teachings.
I go with that.
From a straight up dictionary perspective,
You're my baby, eh?
forgiveness is defined
You're my only baby.
to
Yeah.
feel resentment towards an offense.
Can I hang it down for a little bit?
So by that definition, it means every time you forgive, you're supposed to seek
I
to
don't
feel
have a
resentment.
choice.
Do you seek to feel resentment every time you forgive?
Please.
Your partner cheats, you forgive.
Control.
They end up leaving you and getting
have to.
engaged to their cheating person. Do you stop resenting them, even though you forgave them? Your business partner makes a mess of the books, and you lose a big part of your life's work and the investment you made after they
Anything
lied to
that's
and
born out of
gaslighted
my
you.
body,
Let's say you forgive them.
that I have
Do you
the
stop resenting them?
best chance as possible.
You keep forgiving a narcissistic partner. They gaslight, they manipulate, they run hot, they run cold, they run up, they run down, but you keep forgiving. You are left with a sense of anxiety, not being enough, and rumination. Do you stop resenting them? You stepped up and
You
cared for
may
your
hold
narcissistic
on,
parents for years. You endured their abuse, and as they get their financial affairs in order, despite you losing some earning potential from caring for them, they still give a bunch of money to the golden child sibling who's never helped and doesn't really need the money. And that money could have been used to get a carer or a cleaner into the house to lighten
I
your
love you more
caregiving
than
burden.
anything.
Do you really stop resenting? Listen, who am I? I don't know. Maybe you did stop resenting, which means that you're a lot more flexible and nice than I am. But I think that many, if not most of us, don't stop resenting, especially when we're chronically put through the same kinds of wrongdoing. We may let it go. We may move on. We may leave the marriage. We may get back on our feet professionally.
Oh, but
We may just shrug and feel that
fat boy, eh? Who's my big fat boy? Yeah, you are.
Even though you forgave, you still remember. You don't forget. Forgiveness is so virtuous that we look warmly on people who do it. But I get to have deep, dark conversations with people who say, yeah, I told them or I told the world I forgave them. And it feels good for the world tell me, ah, you really are the biggest person here. And then they'll tell me, in the privacy of our conversation, that I don't really forgive them. To reply, not specifically, maybe you need to stop telling the world that you do forgive them. Because it creates an incongruence and a tension within us, a discomfort in us when we claim to forgive someone. The pressure to forgive by the world is so high. The validation you get is often so admiring that it pushes folks into this pseudo-forgiveness. It's not good. It's like lying to ourselves and having to experience the inconsistency of the world believing we forgave the narcissistic person, believing that we forgave them, but in our heart knowing that we really didn't. This can doubly sting if the narcissistic person behaves badly again, because then we are left holding the bag and having publicly, not internally, feel betrayed again. But honestly, sometimes that second or third or fourth time, hurt us or betray us can be a place where you might say, oh, hell no, I shouldn't forgive you again. I can only give you one recommendation in each relationship. Don't pseudo-forgive. It's not good for you. I understand the pressure to forgive. I do. But on top of all of the cognitive dissonance you've been living in for so long, the pseudo-forgiveness takes its toll. The hard work of survivorship from these relationships is to not succumb to the pressure to forgive. Do it, don't do it, that's up to you, but get yourself sorted first. Feel whole first. Forgiving isn't necessary for that process within you. Narcissistic forgiveness is different than healthy forgiveness. In narcissistic forgiveness, you may end up enabling them. It can leave you stuck in a trauma-bonded cycle, and you keep enduring their hurtful behavior. Healthy forgiveness results in change and growth. But keep it real. Being in narcissistic relationships often means lying to ourselves all the time. Don't let forgiveness be another place that happens. What's another reason we often forget that forgiveness is so hard? So, again, the Forgiveness Month in my healing program has been actually very profound for me as a person creating content curriculum. And I think it's really been a really important series of revelations in the program. But I've been thinking about it, and it's just sort of coming up in lots of places I look. I was watching a news report a while ago. A person's family member has been a victim of a crime. The trial happened. The person who committed the crime against the family member was sentenced. The person whose family member was the victim of the crime said that she forgave the perpetrator. I shook my head as I watched the news coverage. I could see the pain in this woman's face. I could see the grief, the loss. It was her process, maybe part of her spiritual faith to forgive, and I respect that. But I thought for me, and I know this, if I had seen someone terribly harmed due to a crime or an avoidable accident, I don't think I would forgive. And that was me. So it really engrossed me in what this woman's experience was. And it really made me think a lot about forgiveness. Especially as we're talking about it in this program. And while I still don't think I could forgive somebody who harmed my family member, even if they were sentenced or incarcerated forever, it gave me an important insight into why forgiveness is so tricky and unforgivable. Listen, what's happening in most narcissistic relationships aren't tied in such clear-cut circumstances. 99% of the time, the stuff that goes down in the narcissistic relationship is worse stuff. And it dawned on me. I realized that narcissistic people almost never face consequences for their behavior. Lots of people in the situations like they take two tango, they help, they have comfort, she doesn't need it, their partner's working their fight, she had a tough childhood, oh come on now, he apologized. And most people will often take the chance of, oh come on now, let it go. Relationships are tough. You need to turn the other cheek, take the high road, be the better person. The downstream effect of all of this is that narcissistic people rarely face consequences in their relationships, families, or workplaces. And that makes all of this stuff, especially this forgiveness stuff, a lot harder. I do think that if a narcissistic person faced real consequences when they do something bad, whatever those consequences may look like, lose a job, go to jail, get a big fine, lose their reputation, lose something that matters to them, have people turn their backs on them. And let's say that kind of thing happened to them early and often. Conceivably, that could shape their behavior. Consequences shape behavior, we know that. But since most people with these personality styles rarely face consequences, they've almost become emboldened and may even push the envelope and do worse and worse things because there aren't any consequences. But in the absence of them facing consequences, it makes it even more difficult to forgive. Because not only could they do a bad thing, betray you, harm other people, and have nothing in their lives change, now you may be facing pressure to forgive, or may feel you need to forgive. It doesn't feel good to forgive under those circumstances, because it can feel like they got away with it 3 times. They got to do the bad thing, they didn't face any consequences, and now you are expected to forgive them, which is basically saying, yo, no problem, I'm cool, it's all good, I can let it go. So it's like there are no consequences, and the implicit message is that no matter what a person with a narcissistic personality does, they get to get away with it. Because with some, but not all narcissistic people, but I would say most, ultimately, believe it or not, there are actually consequences. They harass someone at work, they finally get called out. They keep playing it fast and loose with some financial thing, and they end up getting a big fine. They cheat on someone and get caught, and it's on camera and gets posted, and everyone sees it, and they're ashamed, and this time the spouse leaves. They get caught on a hot mic saying despicable things, and it gets into the news, and they lose their position as a leader, a politician, or a celebrity. But here's the rub. When a narcissistic person finally gets caught, it likely means that they have done whatever the bad things they're doing dozens and dozens and dozens of times before. This time, it finally gets through. It also means they have done it dozens and dozens and dozens of times before, and this may be the first time that there are consequences. They will yammer on about witch hunts and having a target on their back and they're a victim, blah, blah, blah. When they do face consequences, you may still feel hurt from whatever they did to you, but we do feel a little more stable, a little more whole when there feels like there was a real consequence. In some cases, you may even pity them, but that's a bit more of a trauma bond thing. And in some cases, if forgiveness is what you need to do, them having faced the consequences may actually forgiveness, as I said, and I've been thinking about almost a very tricky territory in narcissistic relationships. There's no two ways about it. They view forgiveness as permission, basically. But always remember that the lack of consequences that most people who are narcissistic face, their ability to commit their sort of behaviors right under the line or behind closed doors where no one can see it, and yet it harms you so much, can make it really hard to forgive. But it did dawn on me that idea that to forgive someone after some other entity has placed consequences on them, I'm not saying at all that it's easy, but it may feel like it's more possible. That if you see somebody constantly betraying you, harming you, insulting you, whatever it may be, they never face a consequence, and you find yourself in this really uncomfortable position of constantly forgiving, that lack of consequence is one more reason that forgiveness is so difficult in this relationship. When you forgive a healthy human being, you have given them really what can only be called a sacred gift. You have given them an opportunity to change their behavior and keep them in your heart. And a healthy person, when they receive forgiveness, sees it as the divine state it's in, changes that behavior, and it's an opportunity for that relationship to move forward. We all make mistakes, all of us. But healthy people recognize those mistakes, apologize for those errors, check in with the person they hurt, and then the person who was hurt has the opportunity, if they so choose, to offer forgiveness. It all seems very nice and tidy and neat, and it works great. There's good research out there showing us that forgiveness is a healthy and important state. But now, let's jump the rails to what happens when you forgive a narcissist. Not so helpful. Because when we forgive people, we have certain expectations. We expect that they will hear us, that they will recognize our hurt, and most importantly, that they will make the changes they need to make so they don't repeat it again. Think about about how it feels when you forgive someone for a transgression of any kind. They've lied to you, they've cheated on you, they've taken money from you, they've harmed something that matters to you, they've betrayed your trust in some way, they've hurt you. When you forgive under those conditions, you expect, you hope at least, that that's going to turn into meaningful behavioral change. If you keep forgiving someone and they keep making the same mistake, that basically makes you not just a sucker, but someone who's actually getting harmed by these repeated episodes of having your trust betrayed. What happens when one person keeps betraying your forgiveness, everyone in your world loses out because it cheapens what forgiveness is. And that's exactly what narcissistic people don't necessarily set out to do bad things. They're not psychopaths. They're not malignant, all of them in that way. A lot of them do the wrong thing because they don't think. They're just self-serving. They impulsively do the thing that feels right in the moment. They make messes and clean them up later. And that mess may be in your own life. So what ends up happening is that leaves you in the position of being with a person who's very self-serving, very insensitive, says what's on their mind. They'll often say, I have no filter. That's one of their favorite things to say. That's how they sort of try to rationalize it. And then you may forgive them, thinking like, okay, they see that they feel that, and the narcissist may even say, God, that wasn't a very nice thing to do. I'm really, really sorry. So you forgive them. And then they turn around and they do it again. They're like, oh, I can't help myself. You better learn to help yourself. Should be the response. When you give a narcissist forgiveness, they view it as permission. They don't view it as an opportunity to change their behavior in a meaningful way. They may change their behavior in the short term for a little while. They may not make that mistake for a few weeks or even a few months, but they will make it again, especially if it relates to their entitlement, their impulsivity, their arrogance, and their need to get narcissistic supply. It's almost like they think they can't help themselves, but they're not delusional. This isn't dementia. They can help themselves. They're choosing not to, because that choice at the moment is uncomfortable, and they never do the uncomfortable thing, even if doing the uncomfortable thing, keeping their mouth shut, to keep them from hurting someone else. Again, make messes and clean them up later. Because so many people have jumped on the forgiveness bandwagon, it's really, really easy for people to sort of fall into that mess of feeling like, I gotta forgive. And in fact, a lot of people get gaslighted about forgiveness. Let's say you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and you keep forgiving them over and over and over again, and they keep doing the same mistakes over and over and over again. One day you said, I am not forgiving them anymore. And people in your family are like, oh, come on now, turn the other cheek, forgiveness is divine, and on and on and on. And you may feel that pressure from outside of you to forgive someone, to be a good Christian, to be a good whatever thing you follow, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to forgive. It cheapens the entire experience of forgiveness, because then you're like, oh, I'm handing out forgiveness like I'm handing out like little coupons. It doesn't matter anymore. The whole thing becomes devalued. But it does matter, because forgiveness is indeed a very, very high divine state. One where you expect that I have allowed myself to put this down, to let this go, even though you fundamentally hurt me, because I believe in you and I believe you learn from this. If a person hasn't learned from this, then why are you forgiving them? Be very careful that you catch yourself, that you don't succumb to forgiveness pressure. Because again, what narcissists do with forgiveness is they treat it as permission. They don't change their behavior. They heave a sigh of relief. Maybe they don't go so far as to say, oh, I got away with that, but I'm off the hook for now. Narcissists are very shame-driven. They don't like to be judged by the world. They're very uncomfortable by that because it cuts at their core insecurity. Forgiveness helps them with that uncomfortable feeling of shame, because it's like, oh, look, I'm not bad. Everything's fine. Everyone's saying everything's fine. And it actually plays into their whole dynamic of denial. That never happened. That never happened. When you forgive, for them, they view it as literally taking an eraser across the whiteboard, clearing it all away like it didn't happen. but it did happen. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget. And in fact, I'm going to take a moment and read from my own personal high and mighty book and read you from my book where I included a couple of quotes. I think those quotes are important for us to consider when we think about forgiveness to another. One thing he said is forgiving is not forgetting. It's actually remembering. Remembering and not losing your right to be back. It's a second chance for a new beginning. And the remembering part is particularly important, especially if you don't want to repeat what happened. Once a narcissist betrays your trust, once they hurt you, or hurt someone you care about, or hurt something you care about, or deceived you, or manipulated you, and you've got to remember it. You can't just naively keep throwing yourself into it, thinking, well, this time it's going to be different this time. Now you know what their landscape is. So if you're going to forgive, you've got to forgive and remember. Remember that there's quite a bit of possibility that also this could happen again. But Desmond Tutu goes on to say, once you've been able to forgive, the final step is to either renew or renew the relationship you have with the one who has harmed you. Indeed, even if you never speak to the person again, even if you never see them again, even if they are dead, they live on ways that affect you profoundly. I think the key in that statement is to renew or importantly, release the relationship with the one who has harmed you. Now, Tutu holds the view that you can forgive in any relationship. I suppose you can, but then he's also giving you permission to that relationship. And here's where it gets interesting. To a narcissist, it ain't going to work for them if you forgive them and then you release them and let them go from your life. They're going to say, what? You forgave me. That means that everything goes back to the way it was.
No, come on.
It may very well be that the reason you can forgive them
Don't.
is because now you're taking steps to protecting yourself and walking away from this relationship. That math ain't going to add up for a narcissist. I can promise you that right now. They're going to say, well, then this isn't forgiveness. This isn't forgiveness because forgiveness means we go back to how things were. There's no going back. And that's the truth the narcissistic individual cannot understand, that there is no going back. The landscape has changed. The trust has been breached. They can't understand you can't go back to the way it was before the betrayal. They're so accustomed to betraying people and just not being there for people and not using their empathy with people that they just assume, again, bring them up. They were on the whiteboard. But you may very well say, I forgive you. I see what this is about. Now it's time for me to go. Yes, that ain't good. Forgiveness with a narcissist is very tricky business. It's not my place to sit here and tell you whether you should or shouldn't forgive. That's a very personal process. But with a narcissistic person, I say you have to forgive realistic expectations. You need to understand that when you forgive them, they may very, very well turn around and do the same thing again. If forgiving them is for yourself, then that's on you. But if you're forgiving them with the condition in your mind that they're going to change their behavior, you will be hurt again. Narcissistic forgiveness is actually a very limited space. It's something you do for yourself, but that gives you sort of this limited return because you are going to get hurt in the same way over and over and over again. It's in this way I actually get into this book. Is this idea, are you really engaging in forgiveness?
Just really tired.
Letting go is when you say, this happened. I'm not signing off on it. I am not okay with this, but I can't spend the rest of my life ruminating about it. This isn't good for me, so I'm going to let it go. But now I know what this person is capable of. I'm not so sure that that's forgiveness as much as letting go. But keep in mind, too, forgiveness can happen a long time letting go of a relationship. As Tutu put it, releasing a relationship. If you remember always that when you forgive a narcissist, they're viewing it as permission, and not permission to make a better second start, but to keep business as usual. If you can remember that, then you can remember, do I really want to forgive this behavior? Narcissistic individuals will often gaslight you if you don't forgive them, or they will demean you and say, you're a very petty person, you're a very small person. They may again pull that whole idea of faith out. You're not a good whatever religion you are. You're a smaller person than me, etc., etc., etc. They will really, really drill into you. And if the other people around you are drilling into you too, family members, friends, it can be a really, really lonely place to find yourself. You don't owe your forgiveness to anyone. It's a personal process. You may not get there for years. You may not get there for 50 years. You may not ever get there. Your forgiveness may become it is very, very personal. I often tell you that it's very simple when you talk about forgiveness. There's so much sort of societal messaging around that. It can be very hard to hold your space and say, I don't forgive this. It can be very hard because for so many people, they feel that pain of narcissistic abuse. And I gotta be honest with you, a lot of people don't. It's something that's with mental health. You newly involved area that a lot of therapists don't know about. And a lot of people out there don't know what you're talking about. But narcissistic abuse and narcissistic behavior is something really
Actual fucked up.
You've given up dreams. You've given up years of your life. Your health has suffered. Your mental health has suffered. After you know this, you're ready to forgive. And I'm here. This video is going to say you have permission to not. Perhaps that day will come, and I hope it for everyone. You have that clarity where you're living life in your means, your purpose. You have found things that matter to you. You're no longer living in rumination. And while the scars will always be there, you slowly become different. Maybe that's forgiveness, where you just stop caring about it. You don't care if they don't care if they you just don't care. And that might be opposed to forgiveness, healthy forgiveness, as opposed to feedback. Again, think about it. It's a very, very heavy topic, and I know that. But I hope this gives you some food for thought. It also gives you some permission that you feel like you do not have to forgive on any schedule. The way narcissists perceive forgiveness is very complicated. It can be very difficult. You can give that gift when you're ready, and only if you're ready. And you may decide it's not a gift you want to give to this narcissistic person. Ever. Again. So I read something the other day, and it said forgiveness benefits the forgiver. So this idea of forgiveness benefits the forgiver. I don't know. Maybe it is true in relationships that are not characterized by narcissism and antagonism. But I must say that in these relationships, forgiveness does not benefit the forgiver. It absolutely does benefit the forgiver. The research on forgiveness consistently says that it's good for us, and it fosters relationships and community healing and lots of good stuff. And in my experience, if the person receiving the forgiveness receives it as the benediction that it is, and it changes their behavior, the result of things like a genuine apology, and the people affected by all this move forward with that behavior, then I absolutely agree that forgiveness benefits the forgiver. The problem is that we view forgiveness as a one-size-fits-all. It's always good, right? And so as a result, we don't see how potentially harmful it can be for people in narcissistic relationships. Where it doesn't go down the way forgiveness doesn't go down the way it does in healthy relationships. In these cases, in the long term, the forgiveness not only does benefit the forgiver, it can potentially harm them. Because to keep forgiving and then being betrayed despite forgiving induces real harm to life. And not only but also to heal and can result in feelings like self-blame and shame. So the struggle is this. In all these feel-good platitudes like forgiveness is the forgiver, that people may see in places of worship or on Instagram or in feel-good retreats, that forgiveness is good for you, And so it's follows. Right? And oh, that person who is forgiven. I've been saying this repeatedly this month, again, so I'm not going to belabor it here. But the entitlement of narcissistic personality styles is such that they believe, they feel entitled to forgiveness. They believe they deserve the forgiveness. They already feel entitled to their own behavior. And because this personality style is focused on what looks good to the world, if they can log that you forgave them, well then they can brag about that to the world. Look at us, aren't we great? They forgave me, we're so good. They sort of treat forgiveness as, again, the proverbial get out of jail free card. And that's not so good. And no, that is very dynamic. It's not beneficial. The challenge is that so much of the relationship life out there, communicate,
we're not freaking out. Who's never freaking out?
Mental health stuff does not account for the impact of antagonistic, manipulative personality stuff. So I don't disagree. Forgiveness in and of itself is not a bad thing. But if you are able to get comfortable with someone consistently betraying your trust, despite your apologizing to them, I can promise you that in the long run, that is not good. So, maybe forgiveness is good for the forgiver in the case of non-narcissistic friendships. But for people in these relationships, forgiveness I must say, forgiveness is a really polarizing topic. And don't get me wrong, I am not anti. I know some of the virtues of forgiveness in healthy relationships. I think it can be a key to growth. However, I see little to no virtue in fact giving some harm in narcissistic relationships. So some folks brought a little quote to saw on Instagram.
Okay, we're fine.
And the quote was something like, forgiving a person who doesn't say sorry is strength, or that it's strong to forgive someone who doesn't say sorry.
Why?
Drop that in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. There was actually once a quote, I think attributed to Gandhi, that goes, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. So I think that this Instagram is really I don't care how the quote said, I don't agree. A narcissistic relationship is a lifetime or a decade or however how long the relationship goes. But never really being apologized to or being apologized to in a BS way. I'm sorry you feel that way.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
Forgiving, that kind of thing, is that strong?
Really? I'm not.
It takes the concept of forgiveness and it waters it down.
Fucking piece of shit.
It turns it into some performative divine action a person undertakes to make the world feel better to them. It enables a toxic person, and it keeps the status quo stuck where it is. All of this grandstanding around forgiveness, that somehow we are better if we forgive, is something I call forgiveness arrogance. Look how good I am. I forgave them. It's not so good if the person being forgiven use that forgiveness as a permission to keep doing their bad things. We know that when you forgive a narcissistic person, not only does it not change their behavior, they also view it almost as a weakness. That you are the sucker
Where the
that
fuck?
they can keep playing. Remaining stoic in the face of it. Is that actually strength? I don't know about that. We make a big mistake in our society that enduring toxic behavior, cruelty, and meanness without feeling, without anger, frankly without emotion, is somehow wrong. It's not. It is a silencing of ourselves, a silencing of our authenticity, a silencing of our damn truth. I bet If I got the people who believe in that black quote into a room and say, oh, Dr. Harmony, we don't mean that. We mean that we can be better and try to understand the other person and forgive them because they are so lost. I know about that. Narcissistic people don't seem that lost. They know when to turn it on. They know when they can get away with stuff, how to manipulate, how to gaslight, how to get their way, how to intimidate other people, how to bully. That does not feel lost to me. It feels very calculated and cunning. The folks who champion a quote like this, oh, but we don't mean it if a person keeps doing this. You can't have exceptions in quotes. You're kind of all in on these things. But that's the thing. The people who don't say sorry, they keep not saying sorry. How long is a person supposed to keep enduring and forgiving so an Instagram quote can tell them that they're strong? For too long, people in toxic relationships have been told to put up and shut up, to not be so needy, to not ask for so much, to not expect respect, to make compromise, to be the bigger person, to be more realistic, to try and understand the other person's point of view. Enough. This has to stop. We have to stop forgiving people who keep harming us. We have to stop forgiving the people who never show empathy. We have to stop forgiving the people who keep saying mean and cruel and hurtful things and lie and deceive and gaslight and who don't apologize or apologize as a way of saving face. You don't have to leave the relationship. You don't have to call them out, but you sure as hell don't have to forgive them. You can radically accept that their meanness and their arrogance and their antagonism is who they are and make your decisions accordingly. But you don't need to forgive them. Why is it okay that in a narcissistic relationship, the world expects just one person to carry the empathy burden? Empathy bad, I guess. Oh, but that's just how they are. They just speak their mind. They're just difficult. They don't have a filter. Somehow, we have become okay with one group of people who must forever be relegated to doing all of the compassionate and empathic heavy lifting for the narcissistic people who refuse to do it. Somehow, we have become okay with it. This is why the world is the mess that it is right now. And here is where I really don't like quotes like this. It's not said, but it's implied in this quote. If forgiving someone who doesn't say sorry is strong, does that mean that forgiving them is weak? I don't think I'm allowed to curse on YouTube, so let's just say F. To endure these relationships, while often being gaslighted by the world, to be eternally confused and guilty and ashamed and self-blaming, that, my friend, is strength. Getting up to fight another day when you walk through the world feeling not enough, like an imposter, and fighting against the internalized, invalidating voices that plague you every minute of the day, folks, that is strength. And finally recognizing the mess of a narcissistic relationship for what it is and saying, I am no longer forgiving this person. They never took accountability. They never took responsibility. They hurt me repeatedly. That is unforgivable. That realization, that is strength. The world is a mess because we keep forgiving transgressions that are unforgivable. We shame people who don't want to forgive after years of being harmed. We call them weak. You want to forgive someone who keeps hurting you, who never changes and never takes accountability and never apologizes? Then you do you. The Instagram solace of feeling strong, I promise you this is going to wear away really fast. But if you say something is not forgivable, what this person did was not okay, you don't have to run up to them and say, I don't forgive you. That's something you can carry internally. That is not weakness. It is deep, radical acceptance. And that, from my point of view, if you can do that, is the greatest strength of all. Thanks again. Remember that a lot of narcissistic relationship happens in your head. You try to convince yourself that things were better than they actually were. And you can start believing that pseudo reality and grieve the story that you made up in your head. Today I'm going to be offering you some tips, 10 ways to become more resistant to narcissists. My goal in doing this work, obviously, is to help people recover, but a bigger goal would be to help whenever possible keep people from getting into these relationships in the first place. And if they're in them, at least help them from getting sucked in too much deeper. Now, I'm offering 10 ways. As you listen to this video, if there are tips you have for becoming more resistant to narcissists that work for you, could you? Because, again, please subscribe to this channel because honestly, this community often gives a tremendous amount of useful feedback, and the comments becomes its own sort of piece of guidance on these videos. But let's take this on. What are 10 ways that you can become more resistant to narcissists in all areas of your life? For me, working with people all these years on managing the narcissists in their lives, one thing I've learned is one simple truth. In an ideal world, you don't let them in the first place. But I know that guidance is a day late and $1 short for lots of you who are already deeply in these messes. And that guidance is useless if this is a narcissistic parent or sibling in which you had no choice in the situation. However, if you could learn some of these strategies for how to become more resistant, you may be able to shut the gate on future narcissists and perhaps also learn to keep yourself a little bit more sane with the ones who are already in your life. Number one, please learn to own your truth and own your reality. If you can do this, then you, simply put, have gaslight repellent. The reason gaslighting works is because we give the other person too much credit and we don't give ourselves enough. This may happen because we perceive the other person to be smart, or for some reason you believe they're credible. And because you don't value your own opinion enough. The first time your reality is questioned by someone, step back, pay attention, and seriously consider cutting bait. Number two, stop falling for charisma and charm. Somewhere along the line, we were told that charismatic and charming people are somehow valuable or interesting. And maybe that's because the charismatic and charming people get to make the rules. As far as I'm concerned, charisma is like heavy perfume or cologne that someone wears when they don't take a shower. It's probably covering something else. Tread very carefully when someone is larger than life or intoxicating or seductive or oh so silver-tongued. I know this is the opposite of everything you have ever been taught. And most people tell me, though, sadly, they fell for the charm and the charisma. We've been programmed to do this, but don't fall for it. If you encounter a charming and charismatic person, you really need to make an effort to pay attention to what they are saying. Remember, number three, that just being smart or educated is not a virtue.
Oh,
Listen,
shit.
I am educated. I worked hard for it. I also think I'm a nice person. But my education is not what made me a nice person. I know plenty of really educated, really smart people out there who are very toxic, cruel, and unkind. Do not fall into the trap of thinking that someone who is smart or intellectually gifted or educated, that somehow those things are virtues. Being smart is just
Shitty fuckery.
If you're smart, then good for you.
Come on.
But
Please.
all of us need to remember that far more important is kindness and compassion. That those are virtues. Being smart is not
Fucking.
a virtue.
Okay.
Keep that
That's
straight. So you keep your
Not
guard
funny.
up and get to know
Oh, funny,
someone
not
before
funny.
giving them the benefit of the doubt just because they're
Come
smart.
on.
Many of us don't always feel comfortable with our intellect, so it's very easy to get snowed by a smart one. Number 4, speaking of that, don't get snowed by rich and successful people. Now this is a riff on that smart one. There is a belief that people
Sorry, baby.
rich and more successful are somehow doing something right. Maybe they are. Or maybe they're just lucky. Maybe they're security. Or maybe they do something shady together. The risk becomes that they become is that they are somehow better than you, better than me, which can set up a power imbalance into which it's easier for them to gaslight. The same mistake can be made around fame or celebrity. Halos can be drawn around people who are toxic just because they are famous or fancy. Don't fall for it. Whether a person is a prince or a pauper, pay attention to their words and their actions. And don't imbue them with virtue just because they're successful. Number 5, watch how they treat other people. This can be tricky because narcissists are so two-faced. They're masterful at putting on a great public face and treating those close to them very badly behind closed doors. But if you pay attention to how they treat who they can consider to be, I don't know, lower status people, or people who make mistakes where they're concerned. For example, the unfortunate server who may make an error in their order, or somebody who calls them out. Watch how they treat those people, and watch how they talk about others. Odds are that before too long, they're going to be talking about you in the same way. Number 6, learn to listen to talents. If you're a poker player, no big way to win other than getting good cards. There's so many other players. Tell by their little switches, nonverbal movements, the way they react to their cards, can give you a lot of information. Narcissists are no different. Their ultimate tell is to watch how they behave under conditions of frustration or disappointment. That's where you usually see it. Their usually charming facade will fade to anger, rage, and contempt when things don't go their way. Don't write excuses for them. Number 7, become okay with setting boundaries. No is a complete sentence.
Stop.
It's okay to say no. To not
Stop
succumb
shaking, you fucking
to what
psychopath.
feels like intrusive behavior just because someone wants
Please.
what they want. Entitled people are more than willing to take their half out of the middle. Boundaries are your way of saying no. Too many people who are vulnerable to narcissists are generally people pleasers. And one thing that people pleasers are not good at is at setting boundaries. Set those boundaries. Hold those boundaries. Is the narcissist going to get mad? You better believe it. Learn to tolerate their discomfort instead of succumbing by constantly being the one who compromises. Number 8, dump the enablers. The narcissists are only part of the problem. The enablers are the rest of it. You may be able to start nudging the narcissist out, but the enablers are yet another vector of toxicity. The enablers are often the ones who continue to gaslight you and second guess you.
fucking
If you
shut
are
up.
distancing and disengaging from the narcissist, you need to do the same thing with the enablers. And this isn't easy because the enablers are quite often, they're actually not toxic themselves, but they live in a big cloud, a cloud of denial and not wanting to face down the toxic truth. And sadly, it's in this way that intergenerational patterns get passed down and persist. Number 9, stop giving second chances. Second chances are what give narcissists their power. In essence, it is you signing off on their behavior. And the orchestra of voices that's around you that want you to give them second chances include their enablers. Now, yes, I know it can seem abrupt to cut a person off after just one mistake. But after they make one mistake, just at least be on watch. After someone gaslights you once, be on watch. After someone is contemptuous and dismissive of you, be on watch. After a person is rageful and then tries to excuse it on the basis of a bad day, be on watch. Being on watch means that you pay attention to determine if this is a pattern rather than just excusing and erasing it. Second chances turn into 10,000 chances and a lifetime lost to the psychological scene in narcissistic relationships. Number 10, surround yourself with good people. I mean, it seems like such basic guidance, right? But once narcissists start getting into your life, they are like invasive weeds that choke out the good stuff in your garden. Narcissists, as a rule, demand all of your time, and they get jealous when you give it to others. They often prefer to isolate and control people so they can get steady supply. And as a result, you might find yourself giving 90% of yourself to the toxic person or people in your life, giving you no bandwidth or time for the healthy people. And that's not what The healthy people are the ones who validate you, who are sounding boards, who do not gaslight you, who have your back, who encourage you to pursue your dreams, who have empathy, compassion, and kindness, and listen. You do the same for them. If you have some of these good people in your life, then you have one of the ultimate narcissist antidotes, and often a way that now you have a way to find the strength, set the boundaries, and cut off the toxic people in your life. If your garden is choked with narcissists and enablers, weed whack that out of there and start planting the healthy, good people who have your back, just as you have theirs. And here's a bonus, number 11. Start getting comfortable with taking the less popular path. It can be very lonely to be the one who sees the narcissist for who they are. You may get called out for being judgmental or demanding or even difficult. It may sometimes mean that you forego going to events or get-togethers, so you do not need to over-engage with the narcissist. This is ultimately good for you. Even if you master the fine art of narcissistic repellence, not engaging, setting boundaries, I gotta tell you, just leave it down. It's not good for you. Now, learning how to grade rock is an important part of this. And grade rocking with the narcissists that you meet works like a charm, because they will become disinterested in you pretty quickly if you aren't providing them with validation the first time you meet them. And I'm going to tell you, it stinks. It doesn't feel good to feel like you need to miss out from the dinner party because the narcissist is there. But this all goes back to cultivating healthy spaces. Those people out there who are calling you judgmental for not just flowing with the narcissistic flow, they may very well be enablers. Sometimes you may need to go along and be with the toxic person. It may be a dear friend's wedding or a close friend or family's birthday party or work event that you cannot skip out of. But then you can do the usual work of However, General, trust your gut.
Almost like the flow is how you feel, how life.
Okay.
I'm
No, I know, baby.
follow
I'm sorry.
you want to live life, you actually be able to close or at least tighten the gate against new toxic or difficult or narcissistic
Okay.
people. This is no
There we go.
These patterns really have to rise out there. You
Okay.
need a strong wall to protect yourself.
Let's go, go.
To give yourself
Go on. Okay, baby. Perfect. Okay.
I'm going. I'm going to keep going. Here's that young wood guy.
Okay. Did you tell Peter to go? Ow, crap.
Whatever it is, please promise you will not share that with the narcissist. If they will dismantle it and mock it and make fun of it, but whenever that really happens, it might be
Okay. Don't be. Shit.
That might be one of the higher order things. A lot of people say, I don't know if I'm doing it perfect. Trust the process. Give yourself time and space to figure it out. And if I didn't feel so, maybe I had not said I was going to hit 10, but I did 12. I would love to hear from many of you what you can do on top of this thing. Things that could really be sort of narcissist repellent. Ways to protect yourself against narcissistic getting in, and to teach you more understanding on how to bear up against the narcissist in your life. Notice, share that. Let's find this book to 12 and 20 or 60 or 100. The more of these things you know, the more you will against the narcissist. So let's talk about this. Why do I know? A lot of people are so put off by this because they wonder, why did I possibly miss somebody who has treated me so badly, who discovered me, who devalued me, who was abusive? And why did I miss them? Especially because of what's wrong with me, I'm a human, there's something really wrong with me, and they go down. Before you sort of throw yourself
I'm sorry, baby. You're gonna keep me inside.
there's so long with that. So let's start with the initial activity we made a video about this. The one who had idea that think about how much time this relationship took. This time with narcissistic relationship. With how much time it took. Think about it. It took time to really think about it. To really think about it. To think about it. To address the argument. To wonder what they didn't like when they got there. Wonder what they were feeling.
Here, baby. Okay. Tom, I'm going.
Alright.
I'm going.
Okay.
Okay, keep an eye on Jack, please. Okay. I don't want to go. Okay. over. Oh, baby. Go, 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 please. No. No. Yes. Okay. 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 I'll be back, Bobby. I won't be long. I love you. Just in case. Sure, I don't have anybody in my front seat, so it doesn't matter. Okay. Go.
Issue that the Ford government's going to have trouble explaining its way out of. If, however, we do see homes being built, that's different. It's important to keep in mind that most Ontarians couldn't find the 15 parcels of land we're talking about on that. But they'll know if they see more homes being built in the province of Ontario. They'll know if they see people moving into them. They'll know if they see housing prices start to go down because the inventory and supply of housing goes up.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. Just, yeah, sorry.
I know, it's like, Kathy makes a good point in that, like, if it's just a housing start, that's different, but 50,000 homes does have a material impact on the overall housing market from an inventory and stock perspective. Now, if the demand continues to go up, 50,000 homes only has a very small impact, but it will have an impact. So if they can show that they actually got housing built, that's a different thing from being mired in a will they, won't they situation of government issued management crisis for 2 years.
Kathleen, I think you wanted to say something there. Yeah, I think that the crux of the issue, though, goes is that, yes, we all agree we need more housing, and it has to be affordable housing. And the Auditor General and other experts have shown that actually we could build the houses we needed.
I can't fucking handle you guys today. Go, go, go! Start. Fantastic. We're fine. Come on. swear to God. Never the right one. Still not the right one. God damn. I swear, if this is still... What are we at? 49. Good enough. Fuck you. You're a fucking twat. I wanna lose it. I wanna fucking full on lose it. I don't wanna do this. I don't wanna go. Okay, fuck you then. Shut the fuck up.
Le gars francophone.
Oui, au Yogo. OK, fait que.
Are you fucking serious?
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Et je garde Geneviève avec moi à ma bonne habitude à cette.
Okay. Okay. Oh, fucking full on fucking freak the